We have a guest presenter, and he is not cabinet and generally has to stay here through the entire meeting. So we're going to rearrange things since he's already here and let you begin. So we're going to start with item D, threat assessment. I think Casey has an introduction, and then we go.
Good evening, everybody. You guys are in for a special treat tonight. Dr. Will Henson has been working in the district since about 2006 as a clinical psychologist. One of Will's specialty areas is our threat assessment process. And just so you know, whenever there's a threat made against a school that Mike will text you or get on the back end of one of those things that's happening, we want you to be aware of the process that we've gone through to gather information and make sure we've gone through this process. We are very fortunate to have Will in our district. Will consults with a lot of other districts, as well as in other roles with us, but he is a key member of not only our team, but the Hillsboro Police Department's adult threat assessment team for adults that are under big threats. So I want to encourage you to ask questions. We've got a lot of slides we're going to get through, but to give you a basic understanding of what threat assessment is and what it isn't, because it's not something that every single thing fits into. So just want to thank Will for his time, and I'm going to turn it over to Will.
All right.
Excuse me one second, Will.
Yeah.
Excuse me one second. I want to apologize to our students for starting before you got shut up here. I realized you're a little bit late, and we are switching the order so that Dr. Hanson can not have to do it past his bedtime. We're starting with item D, threat assessment. I apologize.
You thought 45 minutes, is that correct?
45 minutes, right?
Okay. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm really happy to be talking to you all tonight because I want to talk about what happens sort of under the hood with threat assessment. We all see it in the news. We all hear about horrible things that are happening. And so what I want you all to know is what kind of process we go through, what kind of things were important for us in terms of when we have and see threats in the district. So I want you to understand tonight, I'm going to talk about key concepts in threat assessment, how it might be different than people think in terms of the way we conduct it. Learn about risk factors and warning signs for targeted violence, and then understand the threat mitigation process, which is ultimately the result. The outcome of any assessment we do is to try and make people safer. That's the big thing. Next slide, please. Okay, so the term threat assessment refers to the identification, evaluation, mitigated, targeted future risk. So you might have a kid who comes to school every day and is really aggressive and bites people, or whatever. Those kind of behaviors that might be reactive. The kid gets in situation after situation and can be aggressive. That's not what we do when we're talking about threat assessment. We're also not talking about suicide or self-injurious behavior. We're really just talking about the body of literature that addresses targeted violence. I'm going to do something potentially in the future on purpose. It includes what you think of when you see the news, when you see, mass shooting, targeted shooting events, and it also includes just interpersonal violence, person-on-person violence, dating violence, things like that. So when we staff all kinds of different kinds of threats, it's one part of a larger operation of risk management. Aside from schools, they also plan for physical security, response, post-incident recovery, and things like that. But we're just talking about the assessment part here tonight. And like I said, it's about more than just shooters. It's about anybody that might be thinking about doing something targeted to somebody else or a group of people. Next slide. And you guys feel free to ask questions at any time. You don't have to wait to the end. So concept number one is readiness, not fear. We see it in the news all the time. We see the images. But really the chance of getting killed in a school shooting or having a school shooting is very low. It's about 1 in 614 million. You have a better chance of winning the Powerball or being struck by lightning or crashing in an airplane or choking on food, or, if you really want to worry about something, have a heart disease. So it's not something that happens as frequently and as often as we might think. However, another concept, next slide, please, is that it can happen here. It's not out of the question. So rather than be afraid, we need to be ready. And one of the things that I really want to highlight for you all on the board is that we screen a lot of threats. We do this all day long. We're getting in real time when something happens and it's spelled out. It comes to the Google, to me, it comes to Maribel, Casey, and Chief Erickson, and we're looking at it all the time. So things are happening around us. Now, what gets into the community might be different. We never know what's going to get out there, and parents are going to start talking, but we're doing this all the time. It's almost every day that I'm on the phone talking to somebody about something. In 2021-22, we had 52 inquiries, and you'll learn what that is later. That's just our lowest level of sort of, do we have a threat or not? We did 32 building level ones. We did 4 level 2s. That's when we have our whole team together. And we did 20 search, which is our sexual incident response, which is another part I'm not going to have time to hit today, but that's when we have a sexualized behavior that's targeted. In the current year, we've already done 15 inquiries, 12 level 1s, level 2, we've done more than that actually, and 6 search. So you can see that there's a lot of stuff flowing through the district, a lot of stuff we're working on behind the scenes, even though it's not something you might see in the news or even through the back. Next slide, please. So it can happen here. You can see the red dots on here. That's the number of shootings since Sandy Hook. I updated that last week. So you can see that there are lots and lots and lots of mass shooting events. That's not just schools. That's any mass shooting in the United States, which is sad. Next slide, please. Just click through the next 3 slowly, please. Okay, so, I put those slides up there of the people because I want us to realize that it does happen and it can happen, and we don't want to be on that slideshow. Okay, so on my watch and on the watch of our team, we take it really seriously, that we don't want to miss anything. So the third concept I want to bring home is that threat assessment is a different animal than we're used to doing. So what tends to happen is if you don't have a threat assessment team and you don't have people that have trained and worked together and have the body of knowledge on threat assessment, is when a threat happens, we tend to do whatever we normally do. So the principal goes, well, you broke the rules, we're going to punish you. And you call the police and they go, well, was there a crime? Because if there wasn't a crime, we're not going to charge. And you call, the psychologist, well, we're going to do therapy and counseling, and you call the SPED folks, and they're going to go, well, we might do an assessment. And sometimes that's the right thing to do, and sometimes that's the wrong thing to do. The problem is that, you have these different responses, some of which are supportive, some of which are the hammer, and some of them can exacerbate the situation, and some of them can make it are the right thing to do. So we're always, again, asking the question of what's the safest thing to do, instead of what do we normally do? Because sometimes that response is right, sometimes that response is wrong. And matter of fact, there's plenty of times when the kid has done something wrong, and we decide that, we have these options at the table. We could try to hospitalize them. We could charge them with a crime. We could suspend them from school. And we decided, you know what? Here we've got a kid under a massive amount of stress, and we're concerned about the safety. Like, we charge him, he's out in 4 hours. We hospitalize him, he's out in 12. We suspend him. We're not necessarily any safer. Okay, if somebody has a plan to come to school with a weapon and do something, sometimes on the other hand, we are. It depends on the kid, the situation. Sometimes it's the exact thing to do, and sometimes that student never walks back in school because of the type of danger they pose. So we're really looking at, making sure that our response is the thing that is safer. And sometimes that doesn't make the threat assessment team very popular. So let's go to the next slide, please. Discipline is about the enforcement of consequences related to violation of the rules. It's intended to provide disincentives for rule violations. It doesn't manage risk. Behavior management, that idea of contingency management, and you get something good if you're doing the right thing, you get something bad. If you're not, that's designed to help change behavior over the long term. It's not designed to mitigate that. Therapy and treatment are long-term interventions that require subject to change, in a long period of time in response to actively participating in treatment. that we don't always have the control exactly with the time. Or, most therapists, I went to grad school for 4 years, got my doctorate. How much training did you have in process? Absolutely zero. Therapists aren't trained in grad assessment. And when we first started this, what most districts were doing is they were sending people to therapists and saying, tell us he's safe to come back to school. Therapists who had their training would talk to the kid and be like, yes. And then evaluation and all those kind of things are designed to look at the person, but not evaluate the context. So most, there's no profile of a school shooter, no profile of somebody who commits violence. The profile is in the incident, not the person. So we're not taking people and profiling them. We're looking at them in the context of all the stressors around them, all the things and all the supports around them to try and determine what might happen and how to mitigate that. Next slide, please. Okay. So, some dangerous thinking that we see from people sometimes is they go, well, it can't happen here. He's such a good kid. He's so polite. I don't, derail him. I don't want to think he can get away with saying that. So we've got to punish him. What will other people think if we're not strict? It's going to be reinforcing it. We just send him home. He's been doing so well lately. I don't want to, get him in any trouble. Or I don't want to lose control by involving outside agents. I don't want to make this bigger than my school. I just want to handle it somebody else's school or by district. So again, the critical question that we have to ask is what makes us safer, and not all these other concerns that might come up. Next slide, please. Okay, so threat assessment is about safety planning. So when we do an assessment, we don't end up going, hey, we've assessed this kid and he's got a 58% chance of doing this. Like, A, we're not that good, and B, that doesn't give you much to go on. So it's sort of like if you go to your doctor and you go, hey, doctor, I'm worried about getting lung cancer. And your doctor goes, well, you got a 22% chance. Okay, that doesn't tell you how to mitigate it. That doesn't tell you what you can do. But what your doctor's going to do is look at risk factors, right? They're going to say, well, you've got some risk factors that you can't change. You work in you have a family history of lung cancer, for example. But you have some factors you can't change. You smoke, you work in an asbestos factory, so forth and so on. So just like if you went for medical screening, threat assessment is about looking at the risk factors that other people who committed acts of targeted violence have. So how close is this person to people who committed other acts? What kind of things are they showing? It's not about labeling the person. There's not a profile. The action that we take is not always for or against the person. Sometimes it's for the target. Sometimes we might not engage with that person as much as we engage with the people around them. But that's especially more true in the adult team where we have a lot less control. And the threat assessment's then used to develop a safety plan, a risk mitigation plan. How are we going to introduce protective factors, mitigate the risk? And that can be a whole lot of things, from how we gather intel and see something coming to how we help this person reduce whatever stressors are going on in their life. And so next slide. Okay, so and then we see different types of threats. Are there questions about that so far, about the key concepts? Feel free to ask questions.
Okay, so whenever situation has to be handled uniquely,
yes,
and you had zero training to get started, what are good strategies for us to systemically prepare so that we're not counting on rock stars and superheroes like you, that systemically the system can address this?
That's a good point. So first of all, I am not the rock star superhero. I have a huge team behind me, and I can't do it without my team. So I'm going to talk about the team process later on. But so the important thing is that our team all speaks the same language, and I'm going to go off script here. Because if I don't have, so when we get our big team together, when the big incident, I've got Washington County Juvenile, I've got law enforcement, sheriff, HPD, we've got fire if we need them, we've got community mental health, probation, DHS, we've got a huge bunch of players, all of which have MOUs to bring and share information. So let's say I have a problem, Mark, and I'm like, I really need law enforcement here. And I call some random police officer to come, and they haven't trained with us. We don't speak the same language on threat assessment. So I tell him all these risk factors that I'm seeing, and he's like, yeah, but there's no crime. Or I'm going to arrest this kid, throw him in jail right now. And we're like, hold on. Like, we're not approaching this from a threat assessment lens. We're approaching it from, like I said, your lens of law enforcement, or he might look at me and be like, yeah, you're just some psychologist. What do you know? Right. So because we speak the same language, we can go, oh, that's a risk factor right there. I see that risk factor. So what's very helpful is for all the people, as many people as possible, to know the risk factors, to go, oh, I see a risk factor. I'll tell you another story. I was in with a teacher, and that teacher got a phone call that there was a kid wearing body armor in their classroom. I said, that's a risk factor, as you'll learn today. Preparation, practice, reach, getting ready and doing things like that can be a sign of someone's getting ready to do something. So I said, I would like the police officer. I would like the SRO to respond. SRO wasn't in the building, so I go talk to the principal. I'm like, got this problem, but the principal did the same language. It's like, well, it's my building. I'm going to go handle it. I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. You've got a risk. You got a major targeted risk factor right here. And I'm trying to explain to the principal. Luckily, at this point, I called Alex O, who was our old chief, and he walked in at that moment, and they were able to go together. So just being able to speak that language, so that when I'm talking to somebody else, they trust me and I trust them, and we know that if we're talking about something wise. So, and that kind of training can, we give it to principals, but it can go out, further down the line, counselors, DPs, deans, things like that.
Mark, every school has a building-based team. Yeah, we train, like other safety stuff and other stuff. So that's where it initially starts.
So the team is pretty exceptional.
The team, the building level team is SRO, a mental health person, and an admin.
Yeah. And the team is incredibly trained and lots of experience in that. I will also say that across the region, Will really is the rock star and superhero of this. So we really are fortunate to have this.
But I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that on either team, because that team I can't do it without the partners. Like I'm just the psychologist, right? The fact that we have a team means when we need it, and we have done it, we can bring in FBI, we can bring in BAU, we've done this before. We can bring in regents and have laptops analyzed. We can bring in just about anything we wanted. That's why it's big enough. So the ability to reach out to our partners, yeah.
So you said that the team was made up of the SRO, the mental health, counselor at the school.
A mental health person, it could be.
So I remember earlier in one of our meetings, we said that we don't have enough SROs for our schools. So if that's a designated person and there's 9 or something SROs to 27 schools, what would be the substitute schools who don't have an SRO?
No substitute. They can handle multiple. So it's like we're concerned about student Casey. We need to meet about him. So they would call the SRO.
So there's more floating teams than a designated team per
Well, when it
school.
comes to the SRO.
Yeah, they'll have multiple schools. They'll have a few elementaries, a middle, and a high.
We're not talking about something immediate. We're talking about, this pattern of
They can call them and they'll come. Yeah. So, and that's another thing that, I'm really going off script, is that SROs are very important. I know that, in the wake of some high profile things that happened with George Floyd, for example, there's a lot of talk about getting SROs out of the school, not having police in there. But really, from in Hillsboro, at least I speak to Hillsboro, our SROs are so important because we train them to think like us. We train them in trauma-informed practice. We train them in the kind of language we want them to speak, so that when we have a kid, we need to call the police because they're breaking out and destroying the classroom. We're not calling somebody that doesn't speak our language. We're calling somebody that built a relationship with that student, spending 99% of their time doing proactive policing instead of showing up and being like, oh, I need to establish dominance on the scene because that's how I've been trained. Right. So really our SROs are not charging, preventing a lot of things from happening and learning from us a lot of key principles. So I'm going to get back on script now. Okay, so we see lots of threats. We see direct threats that we said, I'm going to get you, I'm going to bring your gun to school. We see vague threats, you better watch out, I might do something. We see conditional threats. If this happens, then I'm going to do something, or just concerning behavior, stalking, harassing, observing, drawing, making plans, writing manifestos, things like that. Next slide, please. So one of the first things we're trying to establish when we do our inquiry is whether we have a transient threat or a chronic threat. And a transient threat is, two kids get in a fight. Once it says, I'm going to kill you. And then afterwards they're like, I was just bad. There's no lasting intent. It's sort of a heat of the moment thing. They don't pose a continuing risk, or it involves typical frustration. A credible threat usually has plausible details. Not all of these, but could have plausible details, time, place, repeated over time, sustained over time, told to multiple people, maybe some planning, preparation has been involved. So, we started looking at whether something is done or whether that person seems to have ongoing intent. Next slide, please. So another thing that we look at is what we call the dignity domino. Usually, almost always, when somebody is a threat, their functioning is deteriorating because of a major stressor in their life. It could be a loss of a relationship, a loss of a family member, a loss of status or esteem. And they tend to then, their functioning deteriorates, their stress increases as they fail classes, they get in legal trouble, they lose their friends, they lose their girlfriend, partner, boyfriend, and so forth. And so, their function deteriorating, they're becoming more strident in their opinion, and everything's falling apart. And that's additional stressors are compounding them. Next slide. So, a couple of bodies of knowledge that we look at. Now, this has been updated. Actually, I didn't read the updated version. It is very similar to this version. A little bit of language changes, but the U.S. Department of Education Secret Service did a report together based on what's called the Exceptional Case Study Project. Is they're looking at 40, 50 different school shootings that happened in the last 40 years and saying, how are they similar? What similarities do we have? And so they're reporting it about targeted violence, but mainly focused on school shooters. Next slide, please. So the first thing that they found on the Fight and Hospital report was that targeted violence were rarely sudden and impulsive. People say, oh, they just snapped. Most of the time, there were warning signs up to that point, and it's a distinct pathway to violence. Prior to the incident, other people knew about the attacker's plan. Most attackers did not threaten their target directly. So if we think about, oftentimes we see people go, well, did they make a threat? Only about 25% of school shooters actually threaten their target, compared to, say, public figure attackers or political figure attackers. But most school shooters do not make an outward threat. There is no accurate useful profile, as I mentioned. You can't profile a student, you profile the incident. And most attackers engaged in some kind of behavior prior to the incident that caused concern or indicated a need for help. And most attackers, and this is probably one of the most significant ones, had difficulty coping with significant losses or personal failures. Many had considered or attempted suicide. Next slide, please. Many attackers felt bullied or persecuted or injured by others prior to the attack. That doesn't necessarily mean they were, but that was their perception. I've talked to many, many kids who feel that way, even though they end up sometimes, once I investigate, being more of the aggressor, but their perception is a very hostile bias in the way they interpret information. Most attackers had used and had access to weapons prior to the attack. Many were fascinated with weapons, shooters, bad people, and in many cases, other students were involved in some capacity, opening doors, so forth. Despite law enforcement response, most mass shooting incidents are stopped by means other than law enforcement. That could mean suicide of the shooter. That could mean people on the scene. Next slide. So when we talk about risk factors, and we're looking at those, that wasn't the complete list, but you have what we call static and dynamic factors. Static factors are things we can't change about the individual or that won't change about the person, and dynamic factors are ones that can change. For example, history of violence is one of the best predictors of future violence. What kind of mental health diagnosis the person has can be important. It's, again, in psychology, we don't say, we say that it's not what kind of diagnosis the person has, but what kind of person has the diagnosis. So certain diagnoses, increased impulsivity, so forth. You can see rigid and flexible thinking, poor executive functioning, poor emotional regulation, history of bullying, and access to weapons. Dynamic factors, again, things that can change. Anything stressful, really, family stress, relationship breakups, loss of status, recent death, increasing emergency room visits. That's one of the reasons that we have our partners with us at the table, is because we can say, we can look at, okay, we might have seen the tip of the iceberg with this kid, but law enforcement's been to their house 7 times this week. So we can see rising acuity in situations outside of school. Evidence of planning or involvement of someone else is a big major risk factor. Also the target behavior. How is the target responding? We've seen plenty of situations where the kid is being aggressive towards somebody, but the target is egging them on. Come on, come and get me. Any major stressor can be a bad. Next slide, please. Okay, so then we've got risk factors and we've got warning behaviors, things that we're looking at and saying, okay, this is an issue. Oftentimes we're seeing somebody again off their normal baseline. Next slide, please. So direct threats are obviously a warning, but fixation is any behavior that indicates a pathological preoccupation with the person, cause, perseveration, increasingly strident opinions, or negative characterization of the person. It can be any different type of opinions. It can be people enfranchised online by certain ideologies. There's different ones that people are into. Incel ideology is, for example, one that has school shooting type things attached to it. Identification or desire for identification with military weapons, specific belief systems. So oftentimes people are fascinated with other school shooters. We had a situation on the adult team a couple of weeks ago where a student had written a manifesto, and he'd actually gone and researched other shooters' manifestos and used the same font, the same type, and the same language to write his. So it was very concerning. But you could see with him a real fascination, desire to know about those people and what kind of weapons they use, what kind of thinking they have. Next slide, please. So novel aggression is when you see somebody that hasn't been violent before acting aggressively. It can be verbal, it can be physical, but anything that's off baseline. So what's different about that? Energy burst is an increase in frequency in activities related to target. So it might be like, well, he didn't threaten me, but he sent me 900 emails in the middle of the night. Okay, that shows a very fixated ideology on somebody. Leakage is communication to a third party about it. Next slide, please. And then last resort, be concerned when you hear this, which is if this happens or if I don't get this, then this is going to happen. So somebody who's issuing the idea that I've had the last term. Next slide, please. Okay, so the concept of pathway to violence is the idea that people don't just snap, people proceed down a pathway, which is beginning with a grievance. I'm angry about something, and many shooters are grudge collectors. They hold on to things that have happened for a long time. They have violent ideation, and then you see past that is where we get, more concerned. They start thinking about it, researching, planning, preparing, acquiring things they need, even probing breaches, checking to see what would happen if they brought something, checking doors, making maps, things like that, up to the final part of the attack. So again, that was, when we see these kind of behaviors, they might not be indicative of, we might think, oh, they're doing better. A lot of shooters get better prior to the attack. A lot of people stop using drugs, stop doing other things like that because they have a plan and they're going to execute that plan. And so it almost makes them appear better in the short term. Next slide, please. So the pathway to violence, I'm going to skip this slide. Next one. Okay, so let's talk about our model that we use here in the district. So how does it work? So we use something called the Salem-Keizer model. It's been developed by a guy named John Van Driel, who's from Salem-Keizer School District, and it's considered best practice in school-based threat assessment by the FBI. So this is the gold standard, and this is the team-based approach that we've kind of been hitting at all night. It's that common language between players on threat assessment. It's a team-based approach with lots of partners and emotions to share. Next slide, please. So basically the overview of it is works something like this. There's an incident and it's brought to the school's attention, and there's an incident and an investigation. And the person basically is trying to figure out, do we have a threat? Do we have a credible threat that we need to investigate? Or is this just something that the SAT has done, or we need to get the full picture? Once that person investigates that and does the inquiry and decides, the inquiry is just to decide whether we're going forward to level one. Level one is that building level team, it's that mental health, school resource officer, and the admin get together, and there's paperwork for them to fill out with all of these, kind of things that we've been talking about tonight. Questions to guide them. Does the student show this? Do you see this? Do you see this? So that we're able to see what kind of risk factors, warning behaviors, things like that are being shown. Then there's this sort of mini in-between level, which is you can call us out to consult. You can bring district safety personnel, Casey, Chief Erickson, me, someone else to come out and do a little bit further investigation. We have some tools as the site folks that are not part of typical Salem Kaiser, which is we have things like the Petra, which are things that we can use to fill out and have the student fill out to talk about their life that might give us some indication of what they're thinking is around threat type issues. Of course, they have to be willing to fill that out accurately. It has some validity measures built into it, but it's another tool we can use. And then if we want, we can call the full team together within 24 hours, usually faster if it's an absolute emergency. That doesn't happen very often. And start getting a bigger picture, building a picture of that kid with all those memorizing, understanding, so that we can, and then people can pull the resources. So if we need somebody from the police to go up higher and access regions and have a computer looked at, or we need somebody to, look at how many calls to service they're doing, or we want a higher level supervision on probation. We can do all that. Okay. Next slide, please. So when you got the inquiry, that purpose is to determine if the situation needs further assessment. So this is usually if there's a plan against a person or a group of people. Sometimes people threaten, I'm going to get the popular kids or the jerks or the jocks or something like that. The threat's causing considerable disruption in the school. So that's another reason. Sometimes we go to level 2 because there's enough concern in the community that we want to be able to say, hey, you know what? We went through our best practice process. We did it. We went through a process. We have a plan. We consulted everybody that we need to consult. And it might not be because we felt, hey, that's a big deal. It might be because we want to be able to say to the community we did our diligence. But we might not have done it for that particular case. We had a case a few years ago at Hill High, and the SRO is standing. We had an incident. We staffed it. We went through it all. 3 weeks later, the SRO is standing on the front steps of Hill High, and a woman comes running up, telling them there's going to be this school shooting and telling them all this stuff. And by the end of the conversation, she had just heard about a threat that got staffed 3 weeks ago. But we had gone through the whole process and we're able to be like, okay, we've gone through this process. We've got it handled. It's been 3 weeks, by the way. And say that. So we're moving on. So the inquiry we're looking at if there's continued intent, history of aggression and violence, staff, parents, or students are reporting concerns, or we're just unable to determine. We get to that inquiry stage and we're like, we don't know. We need more information. We're going to bump up to the next level. Next slide, please. So the building team meets. They complete a bunch of paperwork, and it's threat management plan. Their follow-up on information they don't have enough information on. The outcome of that process is a plan to protect the student and to help the student who's making a threat. Level 1 goes immediately as soon as it's completed to all of us on a Google Doc. Me, Casey, and Lisa, and Maribel. We look at it and just make sure that they covered the bases. And then we can go consult from there. And then we are a consultative team, so we don't We don't case manage the incident. That is on the building. But we are there the whole time to help them make decisions. Next slide. The level 2 team we talked about, that's your multidisciplinary team with everybody in the world on it, and our MO is to share and our distribution. So we don't use it very often, but when we need it, boy, we're really happy to have it. And it also creates these relationships where, you know, like the other day when Michael Clary from DHS is on our team, I can just call him to consult. I don't mean to build a full team together. I'd be like, hey, Michael, I have a question for you. Is this reportable? You know, we got this issue, and he can call me and we can do the same thing. So those relationships that we have just by sitting down, drinking some coffee together, having this team, you know, allow us to interface and support students in ways that we might not otherwise be able to if we're just talking to somebody who's not met before. Next slide. Please. Okay. That's our level 2 team. I think that's everybody except for fire. Okay, and then sometimes you can go next slide. We've got patterns of risky behavior. Often students have made a threat, maybe posing a threat of some kind, but they may just have a pattern of unsafe behavior, tendency to get into fights, for example. That's usually handled in a different process, usually our functional behavior assessment process. And often that can be related to, the risk can be related to poor coping skills, things that can be addressed on an IEP or just by some targeted intervention. Most threat assessment models aren't going to address those because there's a different body of literature we're looking at to address those kind of things. So next slide, please. And then the last thing we're looking at are accelerants, things that might make the situation worse. When we have a situation that I'm really concerned about, I usually make a timeline of the kid's life. What's happening in your life? Okay, what stressors are coming up? So, you know, it might be that this kid says, well, everything's okay. You know, my girlfriend and I are back together, but he was losing his mind, you know, last week because they were going to break up. So I know I've got at least one accelerant, or the kid has a court case coming up, or dad's getting out of jail, or there's all sorts of stressors that could happen. So I usually want to timeline this out and say, what's coming down in this guy's life? Because unlike with adult team, most of our kids are long-term management kids. Today might not be the worst day of their school career, but what's going to happen on that worst day? And so when we see the warning signs, we start building supports around those kids because we're going to have them forever and all the way until they're 18. And we want to make sure that if we need that again, we've got people connected with them, we've got relationships with them, we've got eyes on, and we know what's happening. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, some common safety planning interventions we might do. As I mentioned, the safety plan is the outcome. These are going to be, you know, these could be all kinds of things. They can be, hey, you have a one-on-one escort. We're going to have somebody with you all day. It might be to change the student's passing time to avoid conflicts. It might be a daily check-in with a designated person. It might be a search. Some kids get searched. It might be helping the parents safety-proof the home and understand how to secure things in the home that are dangerous. It might be referral to counseling or other supportive services. Late arrival, early dismissal, plan on how to deal with the student when they're escalated, a designated place, a person they can go to, or just some sort of ongoing communication and monitoring. You know, the student may or may not know about these interventions. And another thing I'd like to say is that we have a duty to protect people. So none of this requires consent. We're not really assessing so much the person as we are the incident. We are assessing the person in some ways, but I don't have to get consent as a psychologist to do this. Now, I do get consent when I go sit down with them and I give them a test or a clinical interview. That does require consent. But otherwise, we have a mandate to do this. We have to do this. We have to make sure everybody's safe. So sometimes you have parents that don't want to participate, but it's really important when we start the process that we don't shut down our information gathering right away. So, you know, if you have a parent and you're like, hey, your kid got in big trouble and they're suspended and they got this and they got this and we're going to do this, this, and this. You know, the first thing they do is they go home and they circle the wagons, they sanitize the social media, they stop talking to you, and they want to protect their kid. And so what we want to do is build a bridge as fast as possible to the parents because we're going to need them on our side because ultimately we're trying to help and support the student, even if they're the threat. and it'd be bad for them as well if they get something. So we're trying to get in there and build bridges as much as we can because we don't want to just react and shut everything down. Next slide, please. Oh, I did it. Okay. Questions. What questions come up? Anything you want to ask about that or anything on my role is fair games. Yes.
So I think recently, or at least what I've noticed, is that most threats or incidents do happen from either like graduated students. So from threat processes, if it's not an internal student at the school, are there any like policies or things that you guys have implemented to make the school itself more secure, or how to tackle that? Because I think a lot of them, at least recently in the past few years, have been graduated students of high schools or colleges.
Yeah, so that is more of a physical security question, and I'm sure Casey can answer that.
Couple things. One, for the adult, we have an adult team in Hillsboro that Will sits on. So he's the common link between our school-based teams. And, if Travis Ryman is out in the Hillsboro community as an adult and makes a threat, there's a way for the city to go through a similar process that we do to threat manage, just like what we're doing here. I think you have seen in the last handful of years, the physical security of our buildings have really been ramped up with limited access to our buildings, with the doors being locked, card access, cameras that are at all of our buildings now. So there's been a substantial investment in the physical safety of our buildings as well.
Yeah, could you, obviously this is appropriately been high level, but just to give a sense of what it might look like. So suppose you have a situation that warrants a level 2 meeting, and you sit down with your partners and you say, this is what's brought to our attention. What, as an example, how might the conversation go from there? What outcomes might there be?
I think first, when we have that level 2, the school team comes in and presents the information on the student. They know the student the best. So first of all, the school is bringing their concerns. And then from there,
everybody's bringing their expertise in. So I might say, I'm the psychologist there. I might say, all of us will know about no warning signs or risk factors. So we'll be like, wow, we've got some things that are really concerning. I might say, this kid's, he sent 45 emails last night. You got the fixation of warning sign, but I'm also curious about if we think the student might have bipolar, or might have this energy burst related to, mental health stuff. And somebody else, the law enforcement side might say, I'm going to bring, so people are going to bring their expertise in, and then we're going to talk about how we're going to mitigate the threat, what we're going to do, and what kind of approach we want to take with that person. So, as I mentioned, sometimes, what you want to do is, hey, let's commit them, let's arrest them, let's do that. And then you realize that's going to last a couple of days. And maybe they'll come out angrier and more spun up. And it doesn't really make us, it makes us feel safer, but it really makes us safer. So we're thinking about what can we do both to help mitigate, to get intel on the kid, to make sure that, our buildings, our sites are secure. So we're just kind of going through the process of thinking about all the different things. And it's great to see because we're getting experts with the high level people there with the high level people that will help us up there. So we can access a lot of services, and we can also get multiple people's take on it. So once we've gone through the risk factors and stuff like that, we're just thinking about what we can do, what we can advise the school to do, and And if it's a really big case, somebody might be like, well, I'm really worried about this guy. I don't think we can take this lightly. That doesn't happen, all that much, but we've had cases that are pretty scary.
Other questions? So the convening of that full level 2 team was 4 times last year and once so far this year?
We meet every month.
it's a standing meeting once a month,
Gotcha.
and then as needed, as an incident happens.
So so the level 2 indicate on that previous slide is the calling convening because of an incident.
Yeah,
That's
When that team's together, oftentimes we might, that's our level 2 team. We might review
discuss something.
the last couple of cases, or we might even throw up some level 1s and talk about stuff. We might do a little training. So, but that monthly meeting is important just to build that relationship with people.
a lot of times we follow up. So let's say we had a case, we staffed the case of level 2 team in September. At the October meeting, there'll be a check-in, okay? Because usually when we leave that meeting, there's a task list, Casey, you're responsible for this, or, our care coordinators are responsible for this. And then when they come back, we can check in, how is so-and-so student doing with these interventions?
Any other questions? I couldn't help but notice the consistent use of male gender pronouns. This guy, he is.
Yeah.
Is that intentional or is that?
I would say 90% of the threats. So it's habit. I would say it's pretty much usually a guy, but not always. Not always. So yeah, and I don't want anyone to think that it can't be any other gender. So that is not intentional.
I just want to say thank you. You have confirmed that all of the information that I have been getting from my day job is absolutely accurate.
Okay, what is your day job?
We'll talk about that later. It is very nice to know that we have this team. Wish I had one, but that is so critical that team is meeting on a monthly basis, and we're just blessed to have that. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, Hillsboro is the envy of a lot of places.
It's been a lot of ways.
About to be HSD.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. Thank
Okay.
you so much for joining us.
All right, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Feel free to reach out if you have more questions.
All right, we'll head back to item B. And Michelle, we have some information on the budget committee.
Thank you. And thank you, Rose, for reaching out to our budget committee applicants. We have had 4 vacancies on our budget committee meeting. Even a vacant position during our last budget development session. We've been struggling to get folks to apply and stay on the budget committee. We've extended the window. We've worked with the PAC to try and engage parent groups. And I know that board members too have been out there looking and talking to people about getting involved on the budget committee. So tonight, I'm really thankful to bring to you 2 applicants. Rose, do we have one or both? We have Steph. Okay, we have 2 in your packet. You can see that we have Ian King. He is a new applicant. He is also a member of the newly formed Equity Advisory Committee. So as you know, by new rules, we are obligated to appoint someone from the Equity Committee that's also served on the Budget Committee. So very fortunate that Ian has submitted his application and been verified. And then Stephanie Condor, she is also a new application for the Budget Committee, and she had actually applied way last spring and has been very patient with us as we've delayed this process and delayed it in order to get more applications in. So I do believe Stephanie is on tonight. So I would like to, both of the applications should be available for your board packet. And I'd like to introduce Stephanie and give her a chance to share with you a little bit about herself and why she wants to be on the budget. Stephanie, are you on?
Hi there. I'm joining you remote. I won't say where. Hi, I'm Steph Condor. I am a parent of a Century High School student, freshman student. I also am an affordable housing developer that develops a lot of affordable housing in the metro area and have a background in working with community-based organizations. I have a background in banking and finance. And, you know, my real interest is just to be a part of the community and add value where I can. And this will be my first experience working with a school district, but not my first with budgeting and finance. I sit on the board for Boys and Girls Club. I also sit on the Portland Housing Advisory Commission. I'm on the community advisory committee for Hillsboro for their housing strategy plan right now, and a number of other things. So I just try to be active and try to add value where I can. That's about it.
Steph, does the board have any questions or comments for Steph?
Thank you, Stephanie, for your patience with us as we work through this. Appreciate that.
So because we have 4 vacancies and 2 applications, what I would like to offer to the board is that you consider appointment of both applications that came in tonight. 2 positions, 5 and 6, they are both full term. And then continue to hold the other 2 positions open through January 3rd, and we'll continue to solicit more applicants so that we have a fully rounded budget.
So I guess at this point, just sort of head nods. I mean, so feels like 2 applicants, 4 positions. I'm pretty good with appointing them both, right? So I agree. Yeah, but again, more like what's that?
That was my question.
We'll vote downstairs. Yeah, we'll make a motion and vote downstairs, just sort of getting a sense of it. So what we would normally do in this, or not normally, what we have done in the past in the process is if we had 10 applicants for 4 positions, we would figure out a way to use some system of ranked choice voting to figure out what our top 4 were. It doesn't feel like that's necessary in this case. So, so if somebody's comfortable with the idea of making a motion to appoint both Ian King and Stephanie Condor downstairs, I think we're all set. Stephanie, you're welcome to hang around until we meet downstairs and make it official, but it also seems like you might be busy. So my guess is, Rose will reach out to you, probably assume it's going to happen when we get downstairs, and then Rose can confirm that later, or, stay with us for as long as you'd like.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to put my video off and mute on. I might listen in a little more. It's kind of interesting to hear, some of the items that, just be connected with some of the things you guys are faced with. So, but I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much.
We think it's interesting too. All right. Next, we have an equity update. Fran or Connor, who wants to kick that off?
We'll go ahead and kick it off. Thank you for getting the slides up downstairs. I appreciate it.
Slides are also available on our packet area, not the packet, but like in the area.
So the last time we met with our group in the fall, we discussed collective suggestions from our Parent Advisory Committee leadership team. And based on their feedback and on past presentations that our PACs have done to the board, 2 growth opportunities came about and were identified. And of course, every PAC and every family engagement group has their own growth opportunities for us and has different things that they would like us to work on. But specifically, we came up with 2 based on all the feedback. Next slide. And so those commonalities ended up being an improved look at our communication with the district, as well as staff diversification. So cabinet and supporting team members worked together to address these concerns. And tonight, Kana, Kim Bayer, and I are going to report some updates on the systems that we're working to improve. And this isn't a formal equity update as we have done in the past. We'll do that at an upcoming board meeting, but we really wanted to address the 2 common themes that came across with our PAC team. So next slide. The 2 areas, the first one is communication. I'm going to speak to how we have and how we will continue to address communications concerns. And so we all know that communication is key and it is vital to our success. As Will would say, communication can also be in behavior, but communication is essential for our work. And so really working to refine our work in this area is going to be an ongoing process. Some of the concerns that were brought up was are listed on the left-hand side. So I'm going to go each level by level and what we have addressed and what we are doing to take steps in HSD. So the first one was that families have trouble with knowing who to go to when they do not agree with the decision that is made. And so what we work with communications department, and on our website, we have added in who their level supervisor is when you go to a formalized complaint. So it allows family access to who they can speak to if they did not feel comfortable talking to the principal. Principals are always your number one best shot at affecting change and getting to the heart of the matter. But if there are cases that present themselves where they're not agreeing or they don't feel comfortable, this now on our website has an example of where people can go to and who to talk to, whether that be Sarah Crane, Lindsay Garcia, or Craig Carapello. It also lists underneath there my office, my team, and others underneath that can be found on the complaint process that was not there to begin with. Families needed easy access to a means of communicating concerns. So what we have highlighted there is the tip line. And one thing that we're going to be doing in our PAC and family engagement this winter is we're creating a slide deck to remind parents about our mobile app. That is an alternative way. One of the communication barriers is not everybody has access to a computer, but most people have access to a phone. So by downloading this mobile app and using the remind feature, it allows families easy access to alternative modes of communication. Another concern was families need an understanding of the complaint process. And so what we've done in this link is we've we went through, we looked at our complaint process, and we will be presenting to our families not only on the escalation process, but where that can be located, and that will be done in the winter. The reason for not moving quickly enough is two of our 5 organized PACs are running their groups a little differently this year. And so Asia Pacific Islander does not have their first meeting until this Thursday. And our Native American Alaska Native does not have their first meeting until this Friday. So we haven't had a chance yet for people to establish themselves before we can push out a slide deck for our representatives to go and explain this process, but it is in the works. Families need a better understanding of an escalation process. And so each school has a way of going through an escalation process when students are dysregulated or when students are exhibiting behaviors that are not necessarily conducive to the organization of the classroom. And so because every student is individual, a lot of times those escalation plans can be so individualized that it's to one student. As a generalized statement, each of our schools has a discipline plan that shows an escalation process on what you can potentially do, knowing that every student is different and every, like Will was talking about earlier, every situation is different. And so our plan is to bring that this winter to our PAC and family engagement of the overview of what our administrators and our teams have been advised on, but with the understanding that it's going to be tailored depending on what the students' needs that need to be met. And so those are both in process. Another thing that was brought up in regards to communication, if we go to the next slide, some of the concerns were about what are we doing about our students who have injury bias incidences or racialized oppression or other aggressions that have come towards them. And so today we just had a professional development with all of our administrators, and we talked about this again, but it is ongoing. So I've linked in there every students belonged at. So if you remember, we adopted a policy when the state came in September of 2020 and asked us to do every students belong, which was initially all students belong, then they switched it to every student belong. And that by the end of that school year, every school district had to have an equity policy that addresses bias incidents and a guidance on how it will be addressed. it also stated in there the use of certain hate symbols. We luckily in HSD had already had an equity policy that had been adopted years before. So for us, whenever students belong, it just reinvigorated the fact that A, we have an equity policy, and B, we need to really make sure all of our staff know what that equity policy is in regards to bias incidents and racialized oppression. We have done that, and we do that throughout the years through guidance from the state as well as ones that we have created. We also, and I linked in the ones that the state has used, and we've used forms of that, their guidance and their policy. We also have a climate, culture, and voice website. And so the other question that came up was, do staff have resources to support this work? So if you can click on the climate, culture, and voice website, this website is accessible to all of our staff, and it's what we have used this year, merging our transformative cell of equity and cell together. So if you go into the HSD equity, listed on there is our policy. We had at least 1 quarter of PD last year where we talked about our policy and our foundations, and everybody has access to this. You can access our policies, you can access our resources. If you click on updates, this goes out to our staff every week in our Monday notes. So every week we send updates with resources, links, upcoming events, things for them that are tied in with our social emotional learning and equity. It's ongoing, and we have archived from last year. So every week they get, I know Audrey is gonna cringe, but it's about a page long. We're supposed to keep it brief, but there's a lot of information to get out to people. So it gives them access to this. So on a weekly basis, we're updating, putting in resources so that people can access it. So if we can go back to the original slide. So staff has resources, and on that page, there's equity, and then there's also CEL that has several other professional developments that we've done over the year, this year, and then archived ones from the past. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, is you say bias incident, is that the same and or including of macro and microaggressions?
Yes, it could be micro, it could be macro.
Okay.
It's the intent behind it.
Yes.
And if there is an intent that is to cause harm, then that would be included in it.
I just wanted to make sure I was.
Have they been trained with resources? Like I said, you guys know the last 2 years we had quarterly PD that trained them. This year is about sustainable integration. And so we've really worked on how we're going to integrate that into our day-to-day comment and what we're doing in our work. And so I'm also at the very end there, it says, what is the process for reporting a bias incident? We have a process for reporting bias incidents. And so in this form right here, if we can click on the form, this is an internal form that administrators have, and then the reports are sent to me, but in there, it explains the process of a bias incident and what we have to do. Now, this isn't accessible to our community because this is usually reported through our administrators who would go through that process, which is why it's so important for our families to have a ways, means and a mode of communicating with us if this has occurred. If you see in the middle one there, every student belongs, that is an actual active form that students, administrators complete, counselors may complete, that helps walk through the process. Because one of the things about every student belong that people know now is that you have to go through a restorative process, and there are different flows of information than what is different than a typical referral that you would write for a student. And so that includes the restoration and the healing that's going to take place in order to repair the harm that has occurred, especially with oppressive behavior. And so if we go back to the original slide, so those are just some of the things that we're doing with our communication, with improving it, and a little bit of education for where we have gone and where we are going. It'll be a continual, ongoing process with us with communication, because we know how important it is and how it's changing. our community changes and so do our needs and our interests, and so it'll continue to evolve.
Thanks for welcoming Kim tonight. She's going to be participating with me in the second half of the presentation. And based on the feedback from the PAC leadership, we are continuing to tighten our focus of our HR goals of growing diversity. That has been a long-term goal that we've had, but now we are just tightening some of that information and sharing that back tonight, so that as we think about recruiting and hiring our staff, we think about how does that reflect with our students. So we'll be going over some data for diversity of staff and students, and just talking a little bit about how we're growing our own and expanding those partnerships. Go to the next slide, please. So we thought it was important for us to kind of anchor and look at the data from 2018 to 2023 and see how our student demographics have changed just slightly. And we have been a global majority district for a long time, and we continue to grow to be one. We have some areas where we're seeing kind of like what I call continuity. When we look at our American Indian, Alaskan Native, you can see that that has been pretty much the same throughout the years. You can see growth in areas when we look at our Hispanic Latino students and that growth. Something that I want to point out here is I think it's important for us to look at the multiple racial identities, because sometimes people will be moving and identifying as we added that as an indicator of what we will be. So I'm just going to speak of myself. I'm a multiracial individual, but I have identified as Asian. And so when folks sometimes make that determination, sometimes it may change. So you'll see a slight increase there in our percentages. And that would be the same, like for our students in terms of who they identify themselves with that information. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So we thought it was important also for you to see the state data. And this is the census data from 2021. And so you can see across the top there in green is the 2021 data that has an indication of race across. And you can see that we as a state are majority white. And when you go down to the second table, you can see the student data and the staff data. In the white section, that is an indicator of the state data of the educator equity report that we have. And so that's the information that was shared through that report. In the blue section, that's our HSD DCA data. And so one of the things that I wanted to kind of point out was just some of the differences and similarities that you can see there. So one of the things that I saw and noticed is that our American Indian, Alaska students and our Native Oregon population has some similarities in those numbers that are there. You can see that those are the same. And when it comes to our HSD Asian staff in the state of Oregon, there are some comparable numbers there. And then for our HSD Black and African students compared to the state of Oregon, there is some comparable numbers there. When I look at differences, I can see clearly that our Latino Hispanic staff compared to the state is much larger. And so that's something just to consider. And then our multiracial compared to the state also has a difference there. And so I think also as a part of the state data that was gathered, there was about 5% of the staff that selected, I do not wish to answer. So that's an important piece of information to also recognize. And I think it's important just to, as we look at this data and we look at our state, and then we look at our students and our staff, we can see that there are similarities and there are differences, and there is work that we need to do in terms of reflecting our students and the staff that we hire. And Kim's going to share in the next section some of the work that we're doing around that.
Question here before we move off this slide.
Sure.
Yeah, Dr. Nash, you made a mistake. Go ahead and interrupt me with questions.
I was going to say,
You should know it's a little better.
end, but that's okay. Go ahead.
You should know it's better. Our 21.18% of staff Hispanic, is that more or less than the state average? for staff?
Well, when you look at those, if you take your kind of pathway up, you can kind of see.
Oh, so that's the 8.8.
Yes.
Okay.
And then if you look at the overall state compared to the
Yeah.
census, it's 14%.
So that's the 8.8 across the state. Is what.
Did I answer your question?
When I was, so, sorry. As we,
Kind of like Donna. Did you want to ask your question? Okay, thank you. All right, you're up.
Can we go to the next slide? So we just wanted to share some of the different pathways for both students and classified staff that we have in place currently. I want to start first with the top right, which is our diverse educator pathway, which focuses on our students. This was formerly our WU Scholars, or our partner with Western Oregon. Now it's a partnership with the Northwest ESD, and it's expanded to include not just our bilingual teachers, but also counselors and other licensed staff areas. And so those numbers reflect when it says seniors, juniors, sophomore, freshmen, those are college. So right now we have, if you look at seniors, there are 5 seniors that are finishing their student teaching this year and will hopefully be hired with HSD. And if we look at the OSU MAT partnership, this focuses on our classified staff. This is a partnership that we started 3 years ago, so we're currently in cohort 3. Again, focusing, this partnership is with our elementary teachers and really focusing again on our bilingual staff. But we're really also, again, trying to expand to really encompass all diverse staff. The one on the bottom right is our Teacher Connect, and this is one of our Grow Your Own grants that we were awarded through the Oregon Department of Education. So this really focuses on classified staff that are interested in becoming elementary teachers, secondary teachers, counselors, just kind of the wide array of those licensed positions. This grant also for scholarships for folks, as well as mentorship, which is also a very crucial part as they're going through their program. Then finally, the last box on the bottom left is just our classified staff. So in my role, I support and connect with a lot of our classified staff. I just want to show the past 2 years, the amount of staff that I've connected with over the years. And there's a diversity and just making sure that they're supported, that I can connect them with our university partners, finding them different supports so they're able to reach their goal of becoming a licensed staff member. And I also put last year, we have 38 classified staff members that have started their pathway, whether it's at PCC or one of our colleges or universities. And then 16 of our classified staff members we've hired into licensed positions. We'll go to the next slide, please.
Kim, just before you read that.
Yes.
First of all, congratulations, because that's a huge, just the work you're doing is so important for us. And it's been a goal of ours for a long time to have someone in a position like yours to really just focus on this work. And clearly it's paying dividends. Could you talk a little bit about when it comes to our classified staff, some of the standard barriers that you see and just how you're helping them through that? Because there's clearly a path.
Yes, one of the largest barriers, of course, is the financial piece. So we're just very thankful for these 2 Grow Your Own grants, and the OSU partnership is also part of a grant as well that affords scholarships. We also have through, if you're a classified or licensed staff, there's tuition reimbursement, but that's a support. We also, in both of these grants, there's also a mentorship piece as well, which is crucial because sometimes it can just feel isolating. So just knowing that there are others that are on that same journey or have already been through that journey that you can talk to. I think that's important as well, that people just know there are other supports out there. But I would say the financial piece is a barrier. And just having that connection with others is important as well.
Thank you.
Right, over to the next slide. So we're going to just talk about, as we said, we have have a long-standing goal of diversifying our staff, and we're just tightening our focus. And so Kim's going to talk a little bit about how we're addressing some of those things, and I'll kind of finish that.
So our first is to develop more university partnerships, especially through cohorts, because when we have these cohorts, universities will lower the tuition cost to defray some of those costs. So that's extremely helpful for folks. Along kind of segueing to the next one, where it's expand opportunities for staff. A lot of our licensed staff, if they want to become special education teachers, they need that SPED endorsement, or they need an ESOL endorsement, or maybe they perhaps want to become a PE or music teacher. We want to make sure that we have cohorts in place, hopefully, so our staff are able to expand those opportunities. We have already in place with the University of Portland, a longstanding ASOL cohort. And 2 years ago, we started a partnership with Lewis and Clark and their special education endorsement. So we're really trying to look and create more of these types of opportunities and partnerships.
The last two bullets are really important in the new tightening of our focus, is thinking about how we can expand those partnerships with our student union groups and have opportunities to share with them of ways to become an educator, whether it's starting out as a classified staff member or a sub, and then having opportunities to grow. And I think one of the most important things is after you recruit someone, you also want to retain them, you want them to stay in the work. And one of the things that we've done this year that we mentioned, I think previously, was having mentors that are BIPOC that can work with BIPOC staff. And we were able to do that this year with the recruitment and retention grant. And I think it's made a huge difference. I know that Kim, she works with 4 different new teachers that are new in their career, and just supporting with them and just, talking with them about their personal, local, and immediate situation in terms of how they can grow and how they can expand their teaching strategies and all those kinds of things. And then I just want to say that this is really not just HR, but this is a multidisciplinary kind of focus in terms of cross-pollinating with our departments, so that as we think about what Kim and I are doing in our team, and we think about Brandon and Brenda and OSP, and we think about Fran and her team, this cross-department support really is about making sure that we support folks as they enter our workforce and as they grow and develop into what they want to become. And, I was thinking we have a lot of folks who may have started out as a classified, I'm not going to say may, but have started out as a classified staff member and have become administrators or supervisory technical staff. And so there's a lot of opportunity to grow and lead in our district that I really appreciate. All right, I'm sorry, next one. 2 more, you're almost there.
We just wanted to share just the numbers of our licensed diverse hires. So when I came into this role in 2019, you can kind of see there we're at 16%. And then it's kind of grown to 2022. I think it's like 22%. Sorry, there we go, 22%. But then in the parentheses underneath, we just wanted to show like the actual number, because sometimes when you're just looking at percentages, it doesn't actually give a good overall picture. But you can see, we had 162, and over the past few years, we've grown to 285 diverse licensed staff.
Right. The last slide that we have for sharing is kind of I wanted to put out here where our targeted type and focus goal is. And one of the things I think about is you'll see the numbers of our current staff and then where our growth goals are going to be and our targets for the end of this year. And in some areas, if we see a 1% gain of growth, we see 3%. And those are based on where we can target and focus our supports based on our student teachers and that are in practicums right now, because we hope to hire many of those folks. And then we also continue to support our bilingual programs. And so that's why you see a higher number there for our Hispanic and Latino to support our dual language programs. But I feel like we will make every effort. And Kim, as you can see through the data that she's shared, we are making traction and making growth in our diversity goal as a district. And it's a collaborative, it's a collective effort. And I'm really appreciative of the work that she spends. And I just want to say that she spends time at night talking to folks and meeting with them and just listening. What do you need? How can I help you? And trying to find the pathway for them. And so I just appreciate her investment in you.
Comment, can you tell us if we, well, you just put this together and what Mike says times 100, I think we get a bad rap. Let me explain what I mean. It's really easy to poke your eye, poke your finger in our eye and say that we don't have enough diverse staff. But you really got to understand, one, where we started, right? And the progress that we've made. And I think because we don't share this kind of data, people don't understand the magnitude of where we are compared to where we were. So I was wondering, if you haven't already, can you share this presentation with our PAC groups? This would be very impactful. I remember when I was a member of the Black Village, it was really easy for us to say, we always want more Black teachers. And I'm like, yeah, but when you forget we only make up like 1% of the population. But nobody wanted to hear that part. And then, of course, so I'm just saying there's a story and the data should tell the story, but both of them should go together so that the PACs understand where they are. I think a lot of people would think differently and their questions would be different and how they approach us if they knew what we just thought, which is a phenomenal effort. And in this part of the country, I'm not sure we can do that.
Yes, we would be happy to share with the PAC leadership and work with Fran. I think it was a great opportunity for me to see what it looks like at the state level, what it looks like,
That's the kicker right there. And that's actually what I was thinking about. It's the state level that really puts things in perspective because it's really easy for us to say, well, this is my community and this is what I want. Well, if we only make up 2% of the population, what? I'm confused. What we need to have is the 37% that matches our Latino population. We ought to have 37% Latino teachers. That's what we need. Not to say that we don't need the other stuff too, but I just want you to tell the story with the data and let that speak for itself.
I would just chime in that Connor and Kim have been really careful about not sounding defensive or not saying, well, here's why we can't do that.
I know.
And so, so that's why we haven't just come out and said, well, we are really percentage-wise, we're pretty good, because we are always constantly trying to increase the percentage of our diverse staff. But we appreciate you saying that, and just know that we're really careful about not sounding defensive.
No, it's true. I hear you, and I've been in those meetings where people, we've said, nice if we have more Black teachers. Yeah, but we're not the population. And I say that with honesty and authenticity. We're not. So if we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know if we have that many, but what I really want to see is 37% or 30% or 25% of our teachers to meet and match that Latino population. And then if we do that, we might get more African-American Black teachers that would be in this area. So I appreciate the fact that you're not defensive. I appreciate the fact that you take the criticism. But I empower you, throw the data up there and let people chew on that hole. Sometimes that's what people need.
Yeah, I think also the expanding those opportunities with our student union groups, I really am looking forward to being able to step into that space and build upon that as well. I don't want to say anyone's no for them when it comes to going into education. And so I think just having the opportunity to have some conversations about that with our student system.
But it's like, sorry. No, I'll just start by saying that nobody else has said thank you. After Mike says thank you, I'm saying thank you. Because that's a lot better than what I thought it was, because I just didn't know enough.
Looks like she has a question online.
I do. First, Fran and Kona and Kim, thank you so much for the presentation. I know that progress doesn't happen overnight, and I think that this shows a really good trajectory. And so thank you for just the incredible work that the three of you have put into this, and even your teams. The question that I have is around data on the Grow Your Own programs. So I know for the diverse educator pathway data that was presented, we have the breakdown of the number of people in the different cohorts. Do we have enough data on how many of those students eventually end up coming to teach, and how many of them kind of change their mind halfway through the partnership with the university? And if we do have that data, what does that look like? And what is some of the feedback for the folks who maybe have changed their mind or have left, not completing the program, or completing the program and not coming back to teach in our district or to work in our district?
Thanks for your question. I think when I go back to the first cohort of our Blue Scholars, I think we had like about 25 kids or students that were interested at the time. And as time progressed, that number began to dwindle down, in part because at that point we had students that were having to go away from home. And that was a huge barrier for our students. And so now that we have a diverse educator pathway that is expanded in the metro area, I think that's helping some of that. But we do see some folks that are wanting to make a change. Maybe they wanted to start out and going into education, but maybe they want to become a psychologist or, do something different. And I think about, I'm sure all of us here at some point maybe thought we were going to be one thing, and then we became something else. And so I think our students feel that same journey in their own learning.
And you want to add to that? No, that's exactly what I was thinking. I think it's just kind of a natural attrition that people just change their minds and decide to follow what their passion is. And so I think when we look at the numbers, it's kind of been steady. And I think this year we think they're about 25 again. And when we interview the students, they're very passionate and want to kind of start this journey. But I know that we'll see some students decide to take a change in their pathway, and that's perfectly fine. We're still here to support them however they need.
So that chart on slide 8 or whatever, that's seniors, juniors, sophomores, freshmen, that's in college in the program. That's not in our district, right? So some of what we're talking about, I got excited about that 15 number of freshmen. Some of that may see attrition as they become sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
Yes.
Is what I'm hearing. Okay. And then I guess, very good, Sheena.
Sorry, Mark, just to follow up with that. So what would you say percentage-wise has been the attrition rate? So, if we have 24, 25 students who have indicated interest first and have started the program with us, what percentage of them stay and what percentage of them leave?
We'd probably have to dig that up for you, but I will say in the first couple of years, the attrition rate was super high. And that's why you have seen changes in the program to move to a regional model, as well as a model that allows kids to stay at home and go to PCC for the first couple of years. So that's the very reason that there's been changes in the model. But instead of guessing, give us a chance to pull that up for you. But I'll just say the first couple of years, it was really high. And it's got better, but there's a lot of attrition.
If you're looking stuff up and sharing it with us.
Yeah.
The 41% would be the sort of our aspirational number to match our student population. You probably don't know, but what percent of Oregon teaching certified teacher graduates are diverse? Right. Is this graduating class have 41% of our students are Hispanic, identify as Hispanic or Latino? Is 41% of the graduating class Hispanic or Latino? Just we've already assigned you one thing to look at.
Right, that's right.
We did third.
Rose, your daughter's a junior? Okay,
I think I have a unique experience. My son was in the first cohort and we lost him through attrition through a teaching program, but he decided to do a tech degree. And so we have him now as an employee here with the district as tech employee. So he comes full circle. And I have a daughter who is a senior right now. He's going to go one more year and do her student teaching next year. So I've had a kid in this program since day one.
Thanks, Rose. Are there any other questions that you want us to follow up with the Board of Education?
No, I would just appreciate seeing that, the pool data as well. Because I think it just tells an obvious story about the area. I don't know. I have this thing. I'm here in Oregon. It is what it is. And there's not a whole lot that we're going to be able to change about that unless like an incredible amount of people start moving into this area, which I really don't anticipate. So I don't know. I just think that we have to look at this place for what it is. And I don't know. Like, you can't tell me you think that the Black population of this district is going to increase to 5% in the next 10 years.
One thing I would say, Nancy, just to add to that though, is in the skin I'm in, if we hit parity with the number of teachers and students, the percentage, that shouldn't be the goal. I think all students will benefit if we have more Black teachers.
Yes.
There's a lot of research out there that says my little blonde-headed white kids benefit if they see Black teachers, as well as students who identify as Black and African American. So, I mean, I like what you're saying about distribution and parity, but I also think let's shoot a little higher.
I get it. Shoot for Mars, and if we get the boom in the middle, well, we can do that too. I agree.
And I think it benefits all kids.
Yeah.
Maybe especially in Oregon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We are slightly behind schedule. We sort of discussed that this could be bumped if we needed to. I get just back in your mind, we don't need to deal with it today. On page 9 of your packet, we sort of have in the past covered which things we will do as a board proclamations on and whatnot. So we're considering adding 3 of them. You can see the 3 that are bolded there on page 9. We could add that to a work session to discuss on another day prior to this, what's presented on page 9 again. So we don't have to take time today, so we can try to get downstairs. It's not too late. But yeah, at least by looking at page 9 in the packet, we'll give you sort of a heads up of what we're thinking we want to consider. All right. Our work session is adjourned. We'll see everybody downstairs. This meeting of the Hillsboro School District to order. We'll begin as we always do with our flag salute. The flag is back here.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In this November, which is Native American Heritage Month, I want to sort of just take a brief second to go off script and point out that we read this land acknowledgement, and I often hurry through our flag salute, land acknowledgement to get to the business at hand. I just want to sort of make note of how important this land acknowledgement is to me, and that if I hurry through it, I apologize. So much like the flag salute, this is very near and dear to my heart. So just want to point that out. As we gather here today, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge that our district service area is on the occupied traditional homelands of the Atfalati Indigenous people, lands we now call Washington County in the state of Oregon. We honor the Indigenous people whose traditional and ancestral homelands we stand on, the Tualatin Kalapuya, Kathlamet, Clackamas, Tumwater, Malala, bands of the Chinook, and many other Indigenous nations of the Columbia River. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, their ancestors. We recognize the urban Indigenous Native First Peoples community living in the metro area, which includes over 400 tribal nations. The Hillsboro School District is committed to the recognition and education regarding tribal and local history and working with our local tribes in partnership. Thank you. I'm going to continue going off script, but people have had a heads up. This is where we would normally do proclamations, and we don't have any scheduled for today. But I also wanted to take a moment to embarrass and make note of the achievement of one of our student school board representatives. You can see the article there. I don't have what's the name of the award? Title I-C Migrant Student of the Year, Yvette Alonso Garcia. Any you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I'm thankful for each and every one of you, like, mentors, staff, people who, always are there for me. Yeah, I'm just really happy to be here with all of you. To receive this award was just, it's just like a lot of emotions at the same time, just, sadness at the same time, just for my parents to raise me. I'm hard, I'm difficult. So, but I just want to say, yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate all of you.
Thank you. And well done. All right. At this time, would anybody like to make a motion to approve our agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Oh, second.
It has been moved by Director Thomas and seconded by Director Allen that the Board of Directors approve the agenda as printed. Is there any comment? Seeing none, is there any objection? The agenda is approved. All right. Page 2. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that the Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Allen and seconded by Director Thomas that the Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as printed. Is there any discussion? Director Ward.
Yes, I'd like to remove policy IGAI from the consent agenda.
All right, just a reminder, the consent agenda is intended for items that require no further discussion. So any director can remove any item for any reason. So we will address that particular policy later in the placeholder section on F4. Director Allen, would you like to amend your agenda or amend your motion?
Yes, can you tell me the code for the policy again?
IGAI, listed in policies under CI instruction number 1.
Rose, do I just say as amended or do I have to read it? Okay, I move that the Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as amended. Is that what I do? Okay.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Allen and all right. So the Board of Directors approved the consent agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Is there any Oh, yeah.
Just real briefly, there's a small question I had about policy GCBDB. I feel comfortable voting to approve it, but I'm going to follow up afterward.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda as amended? Motion passes. Rose, do we have any audience time for this evening? We do not. I don't have to read that thing. All right. That's that. Okay. We will move on to our action items. The names. Does anybody still have the names from upstairs? Andy? Oh, well
I
done.
move that the Board of Directors appoint the slate of candidates identified during the work session to vacant positions on the Budget Committee as follows. Appoint Stephanie Condor to position 5, which expires on June 30th, 2025. Appoint Ian King to position 6, which expires on June 30th, 2025.
I second that.
It's been moved by Director Allen and seconded by Director Thomas that the Board of Directors appoint the slate of candidates identified during the work session to the vacant positions on the Budget Committee as follows. Appoint Stephanie Condor to position 5, which expires on June 30th, 2025, and appoint Ian King to position 6, which expires on June 30th, 2025. Is there any further discussion? I will make note that the Budget Committee is not full. We still have vacancies available. So two more vacancies available. And if you have any questions regarding the responsibilities and roles of that position, you can reach out to our Chief Financial Officer, Michelle Morrison. So we would look forward to appointing future members of the Budget Committee as they become available. Rose, can you call the roll, please?
Lisa Allen.
Aye.
Sheehan Kim.
Aye.
Patrick McGuire.
Aye.
Monique Ward.
Aye.
Nancy Thomas.
Aye.
Mark Watson.
Aye. Motion carries. The next item, Casey had to go. Are you going to take care of it? Okay. Next item is regarding the collective OSAA sponsorship in our swimming teams, and Mike will give you some context on that.
Absolutely. We typically find that as some of our athletics and activities are difficult to find coaches for, and we're in a situation for the second time where we don't have a swim coach at Liberty for the coming year. There is a mechanism through OSAA where we can have what's called a collective sponsorship. And basically that means that the Liberty swimmers would swim under the direction of the Hill High coach. This is something that we've done last year. It's known as a collective. What we are requesting fits the criteria for OSAA. Part of the process, though, is that the board needs to approve this, and then we'll take it to OSAA, letting them know that the board has approved. So this evening, I would be asking that the board of directors approve the collective sponsorship application, allowing Liberty swimmers to swim under the direction of Hill High coaching.
Any questions? And this is exactly what we did last year.
Correct.
Why do we not have a coach?
Tough to come by. It's especially in some sports. So swimming is one of those where just in the community that we are, we just don't have a lot of people that either feel qualified or are interested in serving as a swim coach.
Any other questions? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that the board of directors approve the collective sponsorship application.
I will second.
Been moved by Director Thomas and seconded by Director Allen that the board of directors approve the collective sponsorship application. Is there any other discussion? Rose, can you call the roll, please?
Lisa Allen. Sheehan Kim.
Aye.
Patrick McGuire.
Aye.
Monique Ward.
Aye.
Nancy Thomas.
Aye.
Mark Watson.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Kana has some great news that she can share with us on our next action item. Microphone. Oh,
all right. Can you hear me now?
yes.
Awesome. So I'm here to talk about the ratification of the salary schedule for the transportation salary that was ratified by Hillsboro Classify United. Just want to thank folks, folks in the audience here that were a part of that process, and just want to extend a gratitude for the collaboration and the opportunity that we have now to expand our salary schedule for our transportation, and specifically for our bus drivers and those that hold a commercial driver's license. And so we, as you see in there, there are increases that expand across the steps, and you can see the increases that happen between each of the steps, and then 4% at step 9. And you can see through the current transportation schedule on the first page, and then on the second page, you can see the expansion of what that would look like, and then the actual difference in hourly rate that I would like to thank my partner, Michelle, who put that together. And so tonight we would like to ask that the board vote in favor of this so that we can go ahead and start tomorrow by posting that expansion to help support our endeavors in hiring our bus drivers. And we had 50 plus at the start of this conversation, and we have seen an increase in number of hires down to, we have 41 openings right now. So we're very pleased with that. So thank you, HCU, for your partnership and for your support on that. Any questions?
I'm happy to see the progress. I'm glad we're able to get to this. 41 still seems like a lot, and I understand we're still asking parents and students to handle more of a transportation load than we would like to. So but I'm glad we're making steps in the direction to try to address this.
Yeah, and we do have folks in the wings that have applied, but have to go through the hiring process and the training process. So we're seeing, hopefully, when I come back next time, we'll see that number continue to go down.
And hopefully we can compete with Beaverton for advertisement. They seem to be beating us. Not sure why, but anything we can do to advertise the way they do. Yeah, happy to see that.
Yes, we have some marketing plans in the works.
Would anybody care to make an agenda or a motion?
I move that the Board of Directors approve the amended salary schedule for the transportation salary schedule as voted by Hillsboro Classified United to update in the current classified management agreement effective through June 30th, 2024.
Oh, nice. So it's been moved by Director Kim and seconded by Director Ward that the Board of Directors approve the amended salary schedule for the transportation salary schedule as voted by the Hillsboro Classified United to update the current classified management agreement effective through June 30th, 2024. Is there any further discussion?
I would like to know I would like to know if this is through 2024. That doesn't seem like a very far.
Well, we just completed bargaining for the contract agreement. So it goes through 2024. And so then we'll be starting again.
We'll be starting again soon.
Mhm.
Right. Okay.
But
Yes,
this
we
will
will.
be, so I was your board representative on the classified union. So when we ratified that agreement, we were already a year behind.
Right.
Yes.
So, well, yes, jokes were made during that meeting that, okay, I'll see you in a couple weeks to start again on the next one. Yes, but this will be the starting point, but this would become canonical.
Right.
And so we don't have to renegotiate this particular thing again in 2024. It would just be part of the general negotiations on the contract.
Got it.
Is
Thank
that
you.
about right?
Correct.
Any other questions?
Sure. Just briefly, I say I appreciate the work of everyone involved in this. I think it's a great example of how things are supposed to work. We had a role that required technical skills and was difficult to fill, and so we increased the compensation to attract qualified candidates, and our HR and finance teams put that together. Our wonderful partners on the Hillsboro Classified Union gave input and worked with us. So I think this is a great example of moving things forward. So I appreciate everyone for this.
Thanks, Patrick.
Rose, can you call the roll, please?
Lisa Allen,
Hi.
Sheehan Kim.
Aye.
Patrick McGuire,
Aye.
Monique Ward,
Aye.
Nancy Thomas,
Aye.
Mark Watson.
Aye. Motion carries. We lost the screen, but that everybody's still with us online, right? Even though. Okay. All right. So next item would be to address, sure I get the policy name right. Yeah, I think we're there, right? Are we there? We're there. I would move that the board of directors approve policy IGAI as presented in our packet.
I second.
It has been moved by me and seconded by Director Thomas that the board of directors approve policy IGAI as presented in our packet. Is there any further discussion? So if you watch any legislature, federal, state, you would see that oftentimes in discussion after motion is made is when people who are about to vote will often clarify their position and why they're voting a certain way. So I would just like to say I am voting for this. I will be voting in support of this policy because it's scientifically accurate, intended to help students avoid, I'm going to read something that I have sort of prepared, that it's scientifically and medically accurate on avoiding STIs and unintended pregnancies. It provides consent and respect in sexual assault prevention program. It affirms the rights of families and cultures and gender identity and sexual orientation, and addresses the menstrual dignity and the recent legislature work to make menstrual products available in all of our bathrooms. Director Ward, I am so grateful to, so for those of you who don't know Director Ward, I'm so grateful to her. She has been excellent participant in figuring out these language mistakes that we have been making over the last, number of years. So she's been amazing at correcting various language flaws that we found in our policy. So as we update them, for example, it would say the board directs staff to X. Well, the board doesn't direct the staff, the superintendent directs staff. And sometimes we catch that and sometimes we don't. And Director Ward has been great at doing that. So thank you for that. Is your objection to this policy a language consideration, or is there something with the policy that you're concerned about?
Thank you, Chair Watson. There are several things with this policy that concern me. One of them is the opening paragraph for this policy says that the district shall provide an age-appropriate comprehensive plan of instruction focusing on human sexuality, HIV/AIDS, and sexually transmitted infections and disease prevention in elementary and secondary schools as an integral part of health education and other subjects, which I do not object to. Then as we go through the policy and with the addition of skills-based instruction, it struck me that we're going to add some skills-based instruction, which I spoke with Travis, or Travis emailed me some details on that. And yet we leave out essential skills as being a requirement. That just doesn't seem to be appropriate. The other thing is on point 14, just for me, it's wording where it's being changed to active student bystander behavior, which seems rather vague instead of keeping what was there that said students who witness or learn about a peer's harmful behavior or attitudes to intervene when safe to do so. Seems a lot more clear than active student bystander behavior. So that's another issue that I have. And then it does say that it's going to be medically accurate and so on and so forth. And yet we are telling students or putting menstrual products in the boys' bathroom. I don't understand how that's useful or applicable. So there's multiple things like that that bother me with this policy.
Thank you for the clarification. Rose or Travis, I don't know which one is probably more appropriate question. Are the language changes that Director Ward points out in order to keep us legally compliant with the changes in state law? Microphone.
So starting at the bottom of that list, the change with the paragraph at the bottom is the addition of that paragraph comes from the Menstrual Dignity Act, which we've educated the board about, both the education pieces and the physical changes to the bathrooms.
And that just passed in the short session, I think, or in the long session.
I couldn't name the date.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But let me clarify, what you're saying then is that because of the changes that we're making in the gender version of the bathrooms, that is why it appears as if we might have female menstrual products in what might have been thought of as a boys' bathroom. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, there are still bathrooms that are marked for men where you can find dispensers of hygiene products. So what we learned as part of so rewinding a few years, and we're talking about when we adopted new curriculum for human sexuality education, we had a presentation from a transgender man who described the lack of availability of hygiene products for him when he goes to the bathroom that he identifies with, and he menstruates. So what we're talking about here is the availability of hygiene products in all bathrooms so that no matter how you look and what bathroom you enter, you have those products available to you.
In support of a child who might identify alternate than where they were born. Yes, completely understand. Thank you for that.
Okay. Somebody else have any context? So I am intending to vote in favor of this policy. Would anybody else like to add any context to how they intend to vote?
I wanted to say briefly, I appreciate the discussion we've had since I'm newer to the board than some of these directors who have served together for years. And there's been a couple occasions where the vote hasn't been unanimous, and I haven't been entirely sure why it hasn't been. And so I appreciate people taking the time. They probably, before I joined the board, that some of these discussions were had already, but I appreciate knowing where everyone's coming from. So thank you for that. I appreciate that this policy is responsive to state law, and I also appreciate that it's inclusive and medically accurate and age appropriate are things that I think it's very important that we include. I think across the nation, we've seen discussions about what sort of education on these topics is age appropriate. And I know that's something our experts, our educational experts take very seriously. And I think that's important to be in policy. And I think the idea that things are medically accurate and scientifically accurate is also very important to have in policy, because we all want what's best for our student outcomes. We want them to live happy, fulfilled lives. And there's a lot of research about how that can happen. And so I think it's appropriate that that's in the policy. And that's why I intend to vote in favor.
Yeah, thank you. So just real quick, since you're asking, I am a high school teacher in another district, and I've seen the impact that this law change of having menstrual products in all of the restrooms in a building has on our high school students, both who menstruate and who don't. I have maybe the girl's restroom is out, so she has to text her friend who happens to be a male identifying student, who can go and grab that for her. And a student doesn't have to go up to the front of the room during a class anymore and interrupt notes and ask the teacher for a tampon or a pad. And like, why would we want that to be what happens anyway? We want the focus during classroom to be on learning. And then, also, there's no harm done to have them in more places. The more access, the better. And those of us who do menstruate understand the importance of that access, no matter where it is. I've used men's restrooms in my life, and my husband, who doesn't have a uterus, has purchased tampons before in a store for me. And it's a thing that happens, and it's okay because we are all humans, and that's important. So I appreciate what this should do for our students, and sort of demystifying that we're all like mammals, and that's okay.
Okay, I believe it's something you want to add?
Yeah, am I allowed to comment on this?
Yeah, we're in discussion time, and I know you're not voting, but yes, you are definitely a board member. So
Okay, perfect. Well, I think just as student perspective on this, I see how over the recent years, the law change meaning menstrual products are provided. I don't see how that blanketed flexibility would hurt in any way, shape, or form. I think a school board's goal is to make it a safe, welcoming environment for all students. And so not making someone who identifies as male who does menstruate feel any more targeted than in a atmosphere where that is not necessarily always accepted. I feel like providing menstrual products in all bathrooms, because like, what if the gender neutral bathrooms are taken, or they're getting cleaned, or they just don't have access to that at the time? Periods are not like I'll get it later kind of thing. It's a very right now. So I don't see how a blanketed flexibility of putting menstrual products in all bathrooms, so anyone who needs it is able to get it, would be a downside on any student or staff.
Thank you, Caitlin.
sure, absolutely. Grab the microphone, please.
Only on the microphone, Travis.
The law, can you hear me?
Yeah.
The skills-based instruction, I could just leave well enough alone in this conversation, but I feel like a teacher at this moment. And I think it's important to draw a distinction between the reference to skills-based instruction in this policy and essential skills. I think Director Ward, the clarification I'd like to make is that in this context, skills-based instruction has to do with students providing consent or students setting boundaries. Like we teach small children to say no in a loud voice if they feel uncomfortable about something that's happening to them. And that's a sexual assault prevention practice. That we teach them the skill, not just the concept that don't let somebody touch you. Also, I shared with you in the email, we do not just teach students that contraception exists, but we buy kits of contraception that we give to teachers so they can show students what those tools are. They choose to engage in sexual activity. Essential skills is getting a lot of attention because the state of Oregon eliminated some of the requirements around essential skills for graduation. And with the state assessment scheme, and then the way that we grade students based on standards, the prevailing thought is that if a student receives a passing grade in their classes at junior and senior year, they've demonstrated essential skills to graduate, and that the work samples that were required for a while for students to demonstrate essential skills are redundant and unnecessary. So there's a perception, I think, out there that the elimination of essential skills has sort of dumbed down education in Oregon. That's not true. On the contrary, a lot of our expectations for students are more career-based and outcomes-based and continue to be rigorous. I don't see the conflation of essential skills elimination and skills-based instruction in this policy as accurate. I think it's a logical sort of non sequitur. So I just want to throw that on the table for the community to understand and the board to understand what skills-based instruction means when we teach students skills related to health education standards.
Thank you for having that context. Director Ward, you have your hand up?
Yes, I appreciate that, Travis, and that explanation. I think that some of the skill-based instruction crosses the line into the parental arena. I also believe that I don't want a doctor going through med school, having shown his teacher or professor, yeah, I understand that, and not having demonstrated that he understands the material or she understands the material. I don't want that individual as a surgeon. I want someone who has had some hands-on and some testing to show that they understand the material. And I appreciate everyone's comments, and you guys already know how I intend to vote. Thank you.
Anybody else does anybody else have anything like that? Yeah, Patrick.
Just briefly, I forgot to mention earlier, I appreciate what Director Ward mentioned about using clear language. And when I noticed that change to use the term active student bystander behavior, I generally think we should be plain spoken where we can be. So I looked into it a little bit, and the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, which is one of the country's largest anti-sexual violence organizations, had an interesting piece about how active bystander is actually sort of a specific school of thought about how people act and how we can evidence-based approaches to disrupting sexual violence. And so it appears it's not just words chosen to be jargon-based, but it's actually a school of behavior, and it's evidence-based. So I appreciate knowing that, and knowing that's why, whether one agrees with it or not, that's why it's in the policy. And I think that from the limited research I was able to do, it sounds like having that in there gives, in policy, gives our educators direction to train students in the most effective ways to disrupt sexual violence.
The other thing I do want to add is I think that bystander change is actually another evolution of the language. We're talking in modern times as things evolve, as the topic evolves, as the expertise evolves, the language changes. We have prime examples of that even when it comes to security, the language has changed. This is another one of those examples. I did the same thing that you were thinking with regard to whether the language was substantive, whether the change was substantive or not. And it is simply the evolution of moving forward. I respect you, Director Ward, for saying that's how you would go it, but I did want to put that on record that it's just an evolution of the current language that we have now. It's just the new school of thought, and that language is a part of that. That active bystander, that's a part of that. With regard to the essential skills versus basic skills, thank you, skills-based teaching. Sorry, I think that's another example of where our own misinterpretation of the group and definitions can get us confused. And your example was spot on. And I urge everybody to just remember that it's not an abandonment of the basic skills. So no, I hope and pray we never get a surgeon who has not had the essential skills. But I think what you're trying to do is get to the point where you're recognizing when we're moving from one level of skill to another, and it's just a different way of saying it. So I do understand the change. I just wanted to say that.
Anybody have anything else they'd like to add? Rose, can you please call the roll? Oh, we need the microphone back.
Lisa Allen,
Aye.
Sheehan Kim,
Aye.
Patrick McGuire,
Aye.
Monique Ward,
Sorry, we didn't hear that.
thank you, sorry, Nancy Thomas,
Aye.
Mark Watson.
Aye. Motion carries. That concludes our action items, I believe. Next up is the regular financial report with Michelle. She have a microphone?
I do, and it's on. Thank you, Chair Watson. There are actually a couple of things I'd like to highlight quickly in the financial report this month. Our example for the Center for Educational Leadership, the Principal Support Framework, we feature a different kind of cross collaboration that we do either with the schools or across departments. And for months now, we've been working on getting a Medicaid direct billing program up and going. We've taken a couple runs at this, and we have a 3-year plan to roll out a full capacity that will provide us additional nurses in the future. And that's our hope, is to provide additional services to schools. So that's exciting to see that taking off after time. The other thing I would like to talk about just a little bit is our new risk manager, Mary Beth Punchakar, is bringing forward a return to work, stay at work program as part of our retention strategies for staff, recognizing that engagement throughout a leave is really, really important about getting people back to work and keeping them at work as much as possible, especially during staffing challenges. We did include the donation as requested. We don't have any over $5,000 for the month of October, but it's included now after the incidents and risk management portion of the report. And then finally, as I was preparing for this evening, I recognized that, there were some formatting issues with my cash flow report. So thankfully, Rose has a current version, and it is available now to the directors in the board link, and it'll be part of the public packet tomorrow. I do have hard copies for anyone who's on fire to see it. If you would like that, I have that for you tonight. And then, of course, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions for Michelle? Patrick?
Yeah, a couple. So on page 55 of the packet, the student incident report shows a higher total incidence in October, significantly higher than any month in the past 15 months. Is there anything noteworthy that we should know about that?
Yeah, 21-22 was COVID, so we had a modified educational model at that time, comprehensive distance learning and also hybrid learning. So we just didn't have as many student contacts. So if we were to go back to a pre-COVID year, and we've talked about including that in this report, it would be much more comparable to a normal year.
Okay. And I noticed the average incidence per school day is 0.2, and then we had a 50% month over month increase, and it's still listed as 0.2. So it doesn't seem mathematically.
Yeah, it's 0.2 per school per day. So that does vary. And I can check in with Mary Beth, but those aren't directly related.
Okay, I see.
It has to do with the level of injury. And she will be coming forward to you guys with a kind of a broader description of this report in the next few months as time allows. Because there is a difference between the head bumps and the serious incidents, and she'll be able to explain that in further detail.
Okay, I really appreciate that. And then my other question was, find it. on page 53, the final paragraph discussing the support Ms. Woodard is providing to the City View Charter School. Are we tracking the financial impact to the district as to how much resources we are spending in terms of staff time and other impact of assisting the charter school with this project?
Yeah, it's really kind of a wash because I'm beginning to delegate some of that support to the charter school as we're experiencing kind of additional funding that are restricted. So we've had to kind of redistribute the work a little bit. So really it's offloading a little bit of my work onto her. So it's a different way. The actual workload is the same. And it's been consistent from the beginning of our relationship with City View. It's part of our ongoing charter agreement to provide both a certain level of flow through dollars for support for the students they serve, and then the additional reporting requirements as well.
Okay. I have totally separate from this. Before I read this report, I have some questions about our charter agreement. And so I was going to write Mike, but maybe I'll copy you if you're someone who's also involved in that with on the finance side. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can share that with you.
Other questions? Thank you, Michelle. The next report and discussion is legislative priorities, but that can't be Beth. Okay. We have some drafts in our packet starting on page, is that 91? No, 58.
Yeah, the situation page is 57, kind of explaining the timeline for board approval of the legislative priorities that have been drafted. And then Beth also included a kind of a leave behind, a little bit more graphic description of our financial outlook, maybe to assist further with advocacy efforts.
I'm guessing this is like a front and back, right? The graphic stuff, right?
And in color.
And in color. Yeah. I know we had asked for it to be more graphical, and this definitely is sort of, in my opinion, well, it's supposed to go out. Anybody have any questions for Michelle?
No one else, so I'll go ahead. I don't mean to be a microphone hog here. Two things. First of all, looking at on page 59, the allocation at different levels, I think that's a really nice graphic. I did question to myself a little bit, is it within our instructional hours framework that we're mandated? Would it be legal for us to decrease school days by 25?
What was it in 2003? So I don't think so, but. Right.
Excuse me.
In past budget discussions, it's sort of been made clear to most of us that the knobs that school boards have are probably less plentiful than the public might assume. It's pretty much teachers and days. Like those are we have the legally mandated things we need to do. Our funding is established by the state. What boards can, the two main knobs they have to become non-deficit spending and budget alignment is cut teachers or cut days. It's like,
yeah, that's also,
so that's how we tend to so what you're seeing here is how the sort of shorthand that we tend to use to talk about it.
That was my sense as well. My thought was that I don't know when I discuss with state legislators, if it's going to be effective to say, if we're underfunded, we're going to lose 25 days. And then they say, well, can you legally lose 25 days? Is that actually a realistic outcome or not?
Yeah, that is something we can do. We just would have to declare that we didn't meet Division 22 when it comes to instructional time. And that is something you will see districts doing.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I would expect that in this region, in this school year, there's going to be a district that has to do that because of the financial situation that they find themselves in.
Okay.
Mark hit it just right. I mean, it's either the number of school days we have in a year or it's class size. Those are the two biggest ways that districts can save money. Because 85% of our budget is in people. That's where the money is found.
Well, I appreciate that you explained that. I wasn't sure if we were required to just have larger classes, that we couldn't keep smaller classes and reduce days or not. So it sounds like there is actually that option. So we can tell legislators that in good conscience. Sorry, I appreciate that. Hopefully I think we've been successful in past cycles at explaining why we need a real service level, and hopefully we will again. But it is important. I think this graphic is going to be really helpful for people to understand what the real world consequences to constituents will be if they choose not to fund appropriately. My other question was talking a little bit about I'm not sure which cabinet member has the best information, so anyone you think of, Mike, when we talked about the priorities, I think for me, we went pretty quickly past the bullet point on the virtual charter school cap. We're saying the board is being asked to approve. Our priority is to maintain the 3% charter school cap. I guess if we feel like increasing it would be detrimental, why would we not advocate for lowering it? I mean, what is to say? Why do we as a board feel that 3% is the correct value?
I wouldn't say that we do feel that that's the correct value. I would think when we've had this discussion with lobbyists in the past, the likelihood of being able to reduce the number is just, it's not a very high percentage. And so that's why just maintaining the 3% is where we landed. Happy to adjust that. I just don't know if politically there's the possibility of doing.
And I would say contextually, in the sessions where I've worked in legislature, I have seen proposed legislation come forward to increase the cap. I've never seen any come forward to decrease it. So we can row a boat upstream, but I don't know that we're going to find too many legislators who might support it.
I appreciate that context. Has been my sense as well. I just from a principled stand of explaining why we have these priorities, I wanted to make sure I understood what other board members were thinking, what our administration team is thinking. I personally would probably, if I were just writing this, I would say maintain or decrease, but it sounds like other board members feel maintain is more appropriate, and I'm happy to go with that.
It's the fight we've had. So I guess yeah, maybe it's just dealing with the fight we have, I guess. This is a report. We're not taking any action on this.
No action tonight. I think December regular session, there will be an ask there. That's what's in the situation page that's submitted.
Yeah.
So I think we're just taking feedback tonight and in the interim period.
And yeah. Go ahead.
Well, given the conversations that we had over the weekend with regard to legislatively advocating for ourselves in Salem, is it possible that there are certain ways that we could look at, we were thinking about how to spin, and I don't mean to use that word figuratively only, how to tell the story of the impact if they don't give us the money that we need. That's really what I was keying on. So there may be a time where we come to you and say, well, we want to think of it in terms of days of instruction or how it could impact the teachers, or we were trying to identify. And I think what I'm saying is we're going to come to you probably again, especially as we wrap up, to having that conversation with the legislators to say, you need to understand, if you don't give us X amount of dollars, this is what we're going to lose. That's in terms of hours, teachers, the whole 9 yards. And so this is a good way for us to start, an excellent way for us to start. But I'm asking for the permission to come back and say there might be another way that we need to describe this visually so that we can get our point across and we can get the money that we need.
And that would probably more likely be Beth when she was back for what it's worth. Yeah. And just, I guess, so some of us attended the OSBA conference this weekend. Legislative advocacy is a topic that comes up quite frequently. So we're working on a number of things on that front. So as many of you know, the Hillsboro School District does not employ a lobbyist. So we are your lobby organization. So we're always discussing strategy and trying to figure out what we can do to advocate for our students. So it was a big topic of conversation this weekend. So you're going to see some evolution in our perspective as some of that stuff crystallizes. We're discussing having some small group or one-on-one sessions with legislators, and the entire region is working on a legislative summit, which we've had for 15 years or whatever, started by Forest Grove, generally continued. So we're working on a number of advocacy fronts. I guess at some point we will just be asked to, this is the thing we leave behind when we talk to legislators. So we're just working on the leave behind component to complement the conversations we have. Yes.
If it's possible, I would like to see this minor change. If it's not possible, it's okay. But under equivalencies, the third bullet point, change of 1 to the student to staff ratio. I think that's what we tend to communicate as class size, even though it is not exactly class size. But it'd be nice if that wording made it clear that that's kind of what we're talking about ish,
Yeah.
you know, for someone maybe who, like when we leave it behind, we're not there to explain it.
Yeah, I see what yes. Yeah, I see what you mean. And that's a number we have used. I think when I started, it was 2 million.
Yeah,
Right,
well,
4 or
when I
5.
started, it was in the one.
In the ones? Yeah. I think one day of school was $800,000 when I started.
750.
Oh, 750. That might be right.
Down here.
That might be right.
We will find a way to say that, and you are accurate that class size and the staffing ratio are a little different number, but people equate those as the same thing. So we will find a way to say that that's accurate and get to the point. Thank you.
Any other questions, or I'm guessing Beth will just go back and watch this section of the meeting and
Hi, Beth.
get back to us with some kind of board update with some changes or whatever. And just know that it's ongoing, right? So as we have conversation with legislators, we're probably going to be working on crafting this. Our next agenda item is is HR. Well, what is it called? Personnel update. I believe Mike has some information in this regard.
Yeah, I think most people are probably aware by now that I am making it public that I'm going to be retiring at the end of the school year. And so this will be my last school year. And I just want to take a second to make a few comments, and then we'll get to more of the meat of the conversation here today. But this is my 14th year as the superintendent for the school district. And this is Hillsboro School District has been like a second home to me. It's a district that took a chance on me. It's taken care of me. It's helped me grow, and it's just taught me so many things. And I can assure you that this decision to retire has not been one that I've taken lightly. In fact, it's taken me a long time to get to this decision, well over a year and a half. And for me, finally acknowledging that this is the right time to do this has just been a long process. And as I've gone through this process, I reflected on a couple different things. And I found myself thinking about my first month or so on the job 14 years ago. And I'd been hired in the spring as an interim while we completed a more thorough search. And one of the things I inherited as the interim superintendent was a big community conversation about J.B. Thomas, an original school in town that used to be the old high school. And there was plans to demolish that school and replace it with Lincoln Street Elementary. And the reason for that is because that building took a lot of the facility budget's resources in order just to maintain it. And there was an injunction filed. And so literally my first week on the job, I'm sitting over at the attorney's office in downtown Hillsboro waiting for the results of the injunction to come back. And are we going to move forward with building Lincoln Street Elementary or not? The injunction was not successful, and we moved forward with the process. It was probably about 3 weeks later that I get a call in the middle of the night telling me that Mike, Newberry Elementary is on fire. And I remember driving to Newberry Elementary thinking to myself, well, what am I going to do when I get there? I mean, I doubt they're going to give me an axe or a fire hose to assist. So what am I going to do when I get there? And as the fire was out by the time I got there, and there was a lot of damage, and we had to rebuild the entire kindergarten wing. But I remember thinking to myself, okay, we've had these two huge events. It's not going to get any worse than this. That was my theory a month into the job. clearly that there's continued to be challenges, 14 years worth. And I've had people ask me, why do you think now is the appropriate time for you to retire? And I feel like it's the right time because from a district perspective, we are high functioning in terms of a school board. We're high functioning in terms of an executive team, and our building administration is stronger and more polished than it ever has been. We've been able to get through the pandemic in a way that we don't any longer have the political venom and the arguments over so many of the things that's happened over the last 2 years. And just the leadership that we have in place puts us in a unique position where it also feels like the time is right. I would say for myself, it's also the right time. I look forward to staying in education. I just don't know if it needs to be 55 hours a week anymore. It feels like it seems like, yeah. Some weeks it is. I intend to continue. There's a lot of new superintendents in the state, and I've been doing some executive coaching with those folks, and I will continue to do that and to keep my hand in it via that. For my family, there's a lot of new chapters that are opening up just with family members at this time. We have kids getting into houses and marriages and aging parents. And so a lot where I need to be involved in those chapters as well. I've always said that my two love languages with my family are acts of service and quality time. And I just need to have the time, discretionary enough time in order to do that. For me, the hardest thing about leaving is going to be the relationships that we've built over the years. This team over here, I'm trying not to make eye contact with them because I will get choked up. So I'll point at them, but look at you. Now this team over here is just top notch. I mean, they literally could work anywhere in the state and they would be hired just like that. And the amount of commitment that you all have to your work and the difference that you've made for our students and for our community, I just appreciate you so much. And thank you for everything that you've done for our students. And just for the great partners that you've been with me as well. I appreciate that. I also want to appreciate the board. This board is just phenomenal, to use a word that Nancy uses. This board is just phenomenal. I appreciate your partnership so much and your thoroughness. I think the discussion that we just had a couple topics ago, there's very different opinions that are represented on the board. And yet that conversation and that debate was as respectful and civil as you will ever see. And if there is a better model for our nation on how to engage in a conversation like that, I think we just witnessed it. I'd also say, I just want to highlight some of the accomplishments that I've just had the opportunity to work with so many great board members. And if you would have told me 14 years ago that we'd be accomplishing some of the things that we've done, I would have probably said, you're probably overestimating what we could do. But I just want to share a few of these. We've grown our dual language program into being a statewide recognized program. We have waiting listed some of our schools. We've got districts coming to us over and over again, looking at the model that we have and trying to replicate that. We've navigated a pandemic in a way that we were able to keep every staff member employed. And we were able to, I think we delivered over 2 million meals to students during that time. We were able to stand families up with not only computers, but hotspots so that they can access their education. Our graduation rates have continued to climb in the right direction. We're going to see a super impressive rebound. We dipped a little bit last year during the pandemic, but you're going to see a rebound that is just super impressive. And that comes from the work of these folks over here. We have students on the school board. That is, we had the opportunity to be at OSBA this weekend, and did anyone know? I didn't see any other students, but maybe I missed them. If they were there, they weren't as cool as our students. So anyway, just the fact that we have students on the school board and we value student voice in a way where we say 3 students at a minimum each year is what we need. And we represent the high schools that way. I think that was just an incredible move by the board as we look back. We developed a career and college pathway program that really is the envy of the region. Travis gets calls on a regular basis, not only from other districts, but from ODE to inform the work that's being done in this area. And just the progress that we've made there is absolutely amazing. During the last couple of years, we've navigated social and political upheaval or unrest in a way that was pretty graceful. We enjoy being in a community where we can be civil with each other. And I'm just so impressed with the way our community has come together. We now have culturally specific PACs that advise the board. If you would ask me 14 years ago, is that going to be a thing? I don't know if I would have predicted that, but it's so important to have that voice. And not only do we talk about the importance of that voice, but we have a mechanism that allows that voice to be heard on a regular basis. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is that we work hard to honor and consider the points of view of others. We have an equity policy that stands in the gap for our students as that is necessary. And we work hard to hear the voices of other people. We passed the largest bond in Hillsboro School District history, $408 million several years back. And that has served our community incredibly well, not only in the facilities that we are able to provide our students, but in the employment opportunities that it provided for our community as well. And finally, the other one I would highlight is our Grow Your Own program. Again, we get calls on a regular basis. We're seen as a state leader in that area, and you can see that those efforts are helping for us to diversify our workforce. I'd say the only thing that makes me more excited about the accomplishments that we've made together is the upside that our district still has and the work that is still going to happen. Not all school districts are created equal in my estimation, and I feel incredibly blessed to have had the opportunity to work in Hillsboro. It's been an incredible privilege to do that work. Early in my career, I said many times, I will never be a superintendent. And I said it really often, and I said it with a lot of passion. And now as I begin to wrap up my time of service in this position, I just want you to know that this has truly been the honor of a lifetime to do this job, to work with these people. And as I move into the next chapter, I will be retiring, but I don't really picture it as a retirement. I picture it instead as I'm really switching jobs. I'll no longer be the superintendent, but I will be the biggest fan of you all, and of course the district. And as always, I'm proud to be HSD. Thank you.
We will have plenty of time for kumbaya moments and tears when we get towards the end of this process. But for now, I want to make everybody sort of aware of, so Mike sort of described the trials and tribulations he had as an interim superintendent. It is my intent to avoid that situation. So while this may be news to some people this weekend or whatever, I've known for quite some time, and me and the staff have been putting together a plan. We have the timeline in front of you that Rose handed out. Michelle has prepared an RFP that will be released tomorrow. So we are wasting no time in getting this process going. Mike was very intentional about how we approach this. So this isn't haphazard. Everything's under control. We got this. If anybody knows, one of the main jobs of the board chair is to conduct a superintendent search if they need to. Apparently I need to. Didn't think that was going to be a thing, but okay. And so we often talk about how school boards have 3 official jobs. We have a lot of unofficial jobs in the community, but our 3 official jobs are hire and fire the superintendent, governance, and the budget. So here we are. Luckily, we don't have to fire a superintendent, but I don't know. Let's not take it off the table yet.
Let's take an ugly turn.
So tomorrow the RFP gets released.
I object. No.
I didn't say we're gonna. So tomorrow the RFP gets released. We will employ a search firm. The board we will have a subcommittee. Director Allen has been so kind to volunteer her time, our longest tenured board member with quite a bit of archival knowledge in the district, has agreed to work with me. And Michelle is also the staff member on the committee. So the RFPs will be open until December 7th. At our December 6th is our next regular or our next work session. So I guess if you want homework in between now and the December meeting, be thinking of if we want to ask all of the search firms the same questions, or do we just want to sort of ad hoc our questions as responses to their presentation. So that's the homework for December 6th. The next day will be the last day to turn in the RFP responses. Director Allen, Michelle, and I will go through them, and we will determine the number of them to be presented. There are, since this is technically an HR move, some instincts I had were, well, some of this needs to take place in executive session. That's not the case. We've checked with OSBA and legal. All of this will be taking place in public sessions. So you're going to see some added public sessions because we have extra work to do. The tentative date we have set is for December 15th. So another piece of homework is for everybody to sort of check your calendars and see if you can make that date work or offer suggestions for alternatives. If somebody knows for sure today that's not going to work, we can discuss that. So the subcommittee will determine how many of the RFP proposal firms will be interviewed. All of that interviewing, according to our OSBA legal counsel, has to take place in a work session in front of everybody. So the RFP responses will be released to us in ad hoc board updates as they come in. So we're not going to wait until the end to review them all. So Director Allen and I will have a little bit of preview, and Michelle will have a little bit of preview as to what's going on. And then we'll get together right after the window closes to determine if 3 apply. I think we probably talked to all 3. If 10 apply, we probably need to get it down to 4. So we'll give every search firm an opportunity to present their case as to why they're the ones to be chosen at the new meeting that we set. Again, tentatively scheduled for December 15th. At that time, so not only will we be interviewing that day, we will be choosing that day. So also be prepared to see their presentations, ask them questions. We will have discussion. My guess is they'll present virtually, but if they're in the room, in front of them in the room, which could be uncomfortable, but we'll vote on and choose a search firm that night. Then at the January 10th work session, we will have hopefully somebody from that search firm that we choose in person, and we'll spend the work session determining what our timeline will be. It is my goal to have the entire process done at least at the latest our April 25th board meeting for us to choose a person. If it can happen sooner, great. And we'll get a sense of the timeline from the search firm that we choose on the 10th. We will also be adding a regular session because we will have to be voting to approve that timeline. So if you look at the district website today, it just says work session for the 10th. We'll take that work session to lay out the timeline with the firm. Then we'll take action to approve the plan at a regular session. And then over the next, weeks, months, the search firm will work to find the best person to be the leader of our district, the superintendent for our district. What I would just remind all of us is all of us are publicly elected officials, and we've had access to information before that some people might not have that we've been asked to keep confidential. It is imperative that during the especially early stages of the search process, that anything that the search firm shares with us remains confidential. We will not get a qualified applicant pool if a superintendent is thinking of leaving their district and maybe not selected for the final 2, if they think their name is going to be leaked and their board's going to find out they're thinking about leaving. So when we get down to, my guess is 2, I guess my most recent experience is that with this is when Assistant Superintendent Spitzer became the Oregon City Superintendent. When they were at 2 finalists, they started reaching out to the board asking for input on that candidate. So I would guess by the time we get down to 2, that's probably going to end up being public. But, and then, we'll also be determining, the kinds of characteristics we want and all that kind of stuff. And so we'll work all out with search firm over the next few months. And then the idea is at or before the April 25th board meeting, we select a new superintendent. Does anybody have any questions? I think, yes, Director Ward.
Yes, Mark, can you clarify the December one about the work session for the interview questions? Are you talking about interview questions for the firm that we're looking to hire?
Yes, like I think in the past we've been intentional, like when Patrick applied for the board vacancies, when we had student representatives in, we've been pretty intentional about asking individuals the same set of questions so that there may not be any sort of bias leaking into our decision-making process. I don't necessarily feel a need to do that with a firm, but yes, I'm asking about be thinking in terms of if we want that intentionality when we're interviewing firms, do we want to ask all of the firms the same questions, or do we want to just sort of free form it within the time? I'm guessing 35 minutes per firm. Does that seem about right? 25 to 30 per firm. You'll give them 15 minutes to present and 10 minutes for us to ask questions, and then, some transition time in between. Something along those lines, 20 minutes to present, whatever they ask us for. So yes, it's, I guess this board, I don't want to just arbitrarily decide. I would love to get feedback from this board about whether or not we want to prepare a set of questions that we have for the firms, or if we want to just ask them questions based on their presentation. So I guess that's one of my pieces of homework is at the December 6th work session, be prepared to sort of discuss what your preference would be on how we address the search for our search firm. Wow. Okay.
At this point, the only additional meeting you're advertising is the December 15th one.
That's the only additional meeting that I can foresee right now. Yeah. And the change to the January 10th one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to double check on the 15th because I have one thing. It's not a Tuesday, but I'll see if I can reschedule it.
Right. I mean, so I would love for it to be that week. So if we can, so everybody, Rose, can you gather up people's information on whether or not what days work that week? Can we leave that with you? And then maybe by the December 6th session, we can determine what the actual date for that meeting will be. Does that seem reasonable to everybody? Head nods, whatever. We don't need to vote or anything, but like head nods that we could come to some agreement on what day we can conduct interviews on search firms. I would love for it to be that week. That keeps us on track with the timeline. I don't feel like we're hurrying. I don't feel like we're dragging our feet. We have a job to do. We're going to do the job that we're elected to do.
If I could just recommend that Rose try and firm up that date ahead of that time before December 6th, so that we can so we can notify the firms and make sure they're available.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So yeah, within the next couple of days, please let Rose know your availability that week. All right, good point. Because yes, as soon as the RP window closes, and as people, we were talking about maybe even putting it in the RP, right? Oh, so yes, Michelle and I discussed putting the date for the interviews in the RP. So I guess if you can figure out your availability and let Rose know by 11 a.m. tomorrow, that'd be awesome. If not, we will make our best guess. Fair? Other questions?
Thank you to Mark and thank you, Lisa. I think this completely makes sense. Lisa is our longest and most tenured board member. And along with that comes a lot of experience, a lot of real experience. So I appreciate the fact that you're able to help us with this because it's super important. So thank you for this timeline. This is helpful. I think we can meet the challenge. And I think we ought to stick with December 15th before anybody changes their mind.
I almost said Director Allen was our oldest board member, but that might be me. There's a chance it's me. Although Nancy behind me by a
Most
year.
tenured. That's right.
Most tenured. Lisa is our most tenured board member. Yes.
Even though I'm the oldest.
Are you?
I think
Might
I
be.
am.
You got me by a year or something? Yeah. Okay. I digress. Okay. Any other questions, Monique or Shannon? We covered everything. Do you feel comfortable with where we're at? Hopefully we suppress some of the sense of panic at Mike's initial announcement. I think Mike has been keeping track of what everybody says when they find out. And I don't know if he started that. So I believe, other than you and your wife, I was the first person to know. All right.
And you're proud.
Thanks for choosing me to be the board chair, guys. Another question, Patrick?
Just real quick, I wanted to say, I expect us to have some really outstanding candidates because Mike has left us in such a great place as a district. And I agree 100% with what you said. Hillsboro is a very special place. And this school district, I think everyone should apply who did this because everyone should want to be here. This is the best job in the country. And so I'm really looking forward to that.
I was going to say most enviable job in the state, but yeah, sure, the country. I'll go with that. I'm just quoting Patrick. All right. If that is it, then we will move on to the rest of the items in the agenda. We kind of expected this to be the marquee thing.
I do have a question. Do we put the superintendent search timeline into this will be a part of the next few packets? That's what I'm thinking, maybe so that we continue to revisit it, update it, know where we are. We've hit our milestones,
And we
that type of thing.
could probably send it as a board update tomorrow morning too, right? We could probably send this not tomorrow morning, but by the time we choose the actual date, hopefully December 15th, we could send a board update with this, canonizing it. So,
Yeah,
okay.
and I've posted the current version in the board meeting site, and I will update the packet with this information tomorrow.
I think we'll probably make this a standing agenda item just to keep you up to speed.
Yes, I think that's what I was asking for.
The other thing Mark and I have talked about is to work with Rose and see which items, January, February, March, April, we can offload from the agenda and simplify the agenda so that we're not doing a bunch of additional meetings and that we can repurpose some of those meetings for this.
Yeah, yes, Rose and I have already sort of looked at the big grid, I guess I like to call it. And she and Monique, you were able to get a copy of this? Perfect, awesome.
And for those who are listening to us and don't understand what we mean about the big schedule, is that there is a huge effort, a very intentional effort on the part of Rose and Mark and our superintendent at the beginning of the year, before the beginning of the year, and we actually map out every meeting, the high topic agenda, the buckets that we'll be talking about, and that it sounds absurdly crazy and very anal retentive, but is extremely beneficial and efficient. And that's part of what makes us what we are. So deeply appreciate it.
And all of those things are important, but this is going to be our number one priority for the next few months.
Absolutely.
Next item on the agenda is AR updates. Mike, do you have anything you want to add on any of these, or should people just, again, ARs do not need board approval. They're just presented for our consideration and knowledge.
Just read through them, please.
Yeah. And then if you have any questions, Mike has listed the cabinet members to which you can direct questions. Next agenda item is policies on first reading. We can see those there. Again, if anybody has any questions, Mike and Rose have listed the cabinet member to which you can address questions. So those will be considered on first reading and subject to approval at our next meeting. And again, thank you, Director Ward. There, one or two of these may have appeared 2 board meetings in a row because Director Ward, through her careful consideration, was able to find some language that should be corrected, and we were able to correct those. So not just because it's on first meeting, does it automatically move to approval? We caught something, we fixed it. And thank you again for doing that, Monique. That's that. All right. And we're there. HCU and HEA. Who would like to go first?
know how to do that. Are we good?
We are.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Kara Hartzell. I am a proud member of the Technology Services Support Team, and some of you may recognize me from previous evenings supporting the school board meetings. Tonight, however, I'm honored to be speaking to you in my role as a representative for our classified staff as the communication officer for Hillsboro Classified United. We are well into the month of November, halfway through. And for many of us, November is an opportunity to reflect with gratitude on the blessings in our lives. Many of our educators have been encouraging their students to express gratitude, share the things that they're grateful for. And hearing our students express their gratitude for their families and their teachers and their peers has inspired me to reflect on some things that I am grateful for. So I would like to share some of these with you tonight. I am grateful for a job that brings me to multiple school locations every week because it allows me to interact with wonderful and committed staff teams at all of my schools as well as within my own department. Working in multiple locations has shown me that the dedication and the selflessness that I see among our classified staff is not isolated to just a handful of dedicated employees. Rather, it is a pervasive culture that extends to every school and every department. Allow me to illustrate with a few examples. This school year, I have watched office managers arrive early, stay late, and report to work on non-contract days in order to meet their work deadlines. I have watched every single one of the 6 custodians that I work with regularly pull extra shifts to cover vacancies, and not just for a day or two, sometimes for multiple days or even weeks. I have witnessed bilingual technicians volunteering time in evenings and weekends to ensure that working families have access to technical support in their home language. I have seen educational assistants step in at the last minute to cover vacancies in the kitchen, in the library, in the office, in the health room, and on the playground. I have observed special education assistants offering unconditional love and calm to dysregulated students in their toughest moments, even when those students respond with verbal attacks and physical violence. And I have witnessed those very same SEAs continue to show up for their students day after day, even sometimes after sustaining on-the-job injuries because they care about our mission and our students. In several of the locations that I've worked in my career here, classified staff are among the most experienced employees in the building, and I have watched them share their wealth of community knowledge with new teachers and incoming administrators. This is knowledge that has been obtained over 20, 25, or even 30 years of committed service to HSD, and sometimes even to a single school community. So, I am deeply proud to be a member of and to represent such a dedicated, loyal, and selfless group of employees. And I am incredibly grateful for the ways that classified staff sacrifice themselves every day in every school and every department in order to keep our schools operational. And I know that the school board and the administration share that sense of gratitude. But perhaps in addition to voicing our gratitude, we need to be asking some hard questions. For example, why has our district become reliant on this above and beyond level of sacrifice from its staff? And how long can we continue on this trajectory before our employees are too burned out to sustain it? Some might argue that a certain level of self-sacrifice is simply in the nature of public education, but I do believe that there are practical steps that the board can take to illustrate gratitude through action. And if we work together, I believe we can find creative and proactive solutions to overwork and short staffing. Before I close out my time here tonight, I'd like to highlight 2 examples of this type of action that our classified staff are grateful for just this month. The first was the delivery of the retention bonuses last week.
And the second was the ratification of salary adjustments for the transportation department that occurred here tonight. We share your hope that the salary adjustments will help to alleviate our bus driver shortages, and we thank you for the demonstration of gratitude for our labor that the retention bonuses signify. HCU is grateful to our administrators and to the board for your collaboration on both of these issues. They truly do make a difference to the classified staff. We look forward to continued partnership this year as we search for more proactive ways to express gratitude and prevent burnout amongst the classified workforce. Thank you for your time this evening.
Good evening, Chair Watson, Vice Chair Thomas, fellow board members, Superintendent Scott, and administrative leaders. Happy American Education Week. A heartfelt thank you to all our administrators, educators, paraprofessionals, coaches, office staff, nurses, nutrition services, custodians, facilities department, and transportation department for making our schools a welcoming place to grow, learn, and thrive. Prior to school starting, HEA has been working hard to prepare for the recent general election by researching and endorsing candidates. Our members have helped with phone banking and canvassing for our members to get out the vote. HEA simply asked our members to vote their values for themselves, their families, and our students. I'm proud to say that 80% of our members cast their vote in this past election cycle. As a result, HEA is excited to announce that all 4 of our endorsed candidates, pro-education candidates, mind you, were elected. Congratulations to State Representatives Ty Pham, Nathan Sosa, Susan McLean, and Senator Janine Salmon. HEA is proud of our former Hill High graduate, Christina Stevenson, as she is the newly elected Labor Commissioner. The energy of inspiration must be immense for her former HSD educator who had her as a student. It reminds me of the scene from Mr. Holland's Opus when a former clarinet player, Gertrude Lang, became the state governor. Speaking of governors, we are proud of our OEA endorsed Governor-elect Tina Kotek. According to OEA President Reed Scott Schwalbach, Tina has been a long champion of public education and working families in Oregon. Under her speakership, the Oregon legislature passed the Student Success Act, increased minimum wage, secured the right to paid family leave act, and much, much more. We're excited to work with her to strengthen public schools and empower working families throughout the state. We celebrate November as it is also recognized as Native American Heritage Month. I took the opportunity to encourage our members via our newsletter to explore the history and contributions of Native peoples by sharing lessons this month and throughout the year that were created by our National Education Association. It's important to me that you and those listening here tonight hear the following quote that I shared with our members from NEA Ed Justice, as it encapsulates a portion of my advocacy for our Native students and their families. We all deserve an education that imparts honesty about who we are, integrity of how we treat others, and courage to do what's right. For far too long, too many of us have been given little to no knowledge of Native history, or have been taught inaccurate information. When we're not taught the full truth, we make room for bias, discrimination, and injustice. But when we teach honestly about our history, we realize our shared connections and make progress towards justice possible. Educators are very busy prepping for the upcoming parent-teacher conferences next week. We look forward to meeting our parents, guardians, and collaborating with families to support our students in their academic needs. Superintendent Scott, we sincerely thank you for your service to our district, and we want to congratulate you on your upcoming retirement. HEA would like to wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving next week. Thank you. Finally, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I am happy to report that our licensed staff was elated to receive the House Bill 4030 bonuses last week. Members have expressed that the timing was perfect to prepare for the holiday season and the upcoming winter break. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion time. First up are our students. You guys, we selected an order.
I just wanted to say thank you, Nancy and Mark, to transporting me to OSB Convention Center. It was very eye-opening. I got to hear from a lot of districts and get to see that we're all getting into like one group and sharing ideas on how we could improve in our district, state. Since I'm a competitive tennis player, I always go to like different districts like Newburgh, McMinnville, and be like, oh, we're totally gonna beat them. We're like, yeah, it's competitive, but once it comes to education and the student's body, we want to improve and want to gather our thoughts and just make succeed as a whole. So thank you, Nancy and Mark. Also, I want to congratulate Mike. I'm really sad that you're retiring, but congratulations. Hopefully next year, you could come see my graduation. I'm finger crossing on that. I'm really sad that's not, yeah. But just congratulations. Actually, happy Education Week. Thank you, staff, teachers, custodians, lunch people, without them, we wouldn't have our school system running. So thank you all. Is on? Hello? Okay, first I'd like to say thank you to Kona when she was talking about the diversity hiring and the partnership she has, and she's working with Kim, right? And how it makes me hopeful in the future that I get to see my friends and I get to see my little sister go through an education system with teachers that look like them. And I appreciate all your hard work. Mike, thank you. Thank you so much for everything you've done on the board. I know every time I talk to my parents about, oh, we have another board meeting, my dad is always like very interested in what I have to say and everything. So I guess he's gonna be like super like heartbroken. I'm gonna tell him that you're gonna retire. Congratulations. And I know this is very late, but I'd like to thank everybody who came to the Century Showcase or was volunteering there. It was a very wild experience and one of the like last showcases I'll ever do. I also like to say that Liberty did an amazing job at the showcase as well. It's true. It's true. Well, I mean, I would like just to start off by thanking, I think, all of you guys for this opportunity. This week I've become a lot more hyper aware of, I mean, I'm graduating, scary. But I think I've become a lot more hyper aware of like my potential, if that makes sense. I've gotten a lot of, not compliments, but a lot of reassurance of like what my goals are is obtainable, which is like kind of scary. As some of you guys know, because I brag about it all the time, I'm president or I'm team captain, whatever you would prefer to call it, of the mock trial team. So I'm, practicing law, which is really cool. So if you guys see my name on the ballot for district attorney in like 10, 20 years, my name is Kaylee McGuire. Please vote for me. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to thank you guys because just giving me this atmosphere to learn how conversations and compromise work in a business setting is really important. That way I'm not going in blind. So this is amazing. And also I'm going to copy them and thank you, Mike, for
everything that you do. I think you're the one name in the school district that I've known since like kindergarten.
Is that good?
In the sense of like teachers change every year, principals, I've seen principals come and go. I've had good and bad experiences with principals, but I think you're the one name that I've seen in the Hillsboro School District since kindergarten and only in a positive light. So you've done an amazing job.
All right, you're up again.
Well, clearly you just turned my vote. Well done. No, you've heard plenty from me this evening, but I would like to echo Mary Kay and Mary Kay over here. Sorry. Yeah, you're in the wrong spot this evening. Just American Education Week is just such an opportunity to honor our staff and the dedication that all of our folks have. Really are the heart and soul of our school district and make things happen. And the work that all of you do makes a difference in our kids' lives, and it really changes our students' lives in such a positive way. So thank you so much to all of our staff that make this happen every day. And then the final thing I'll say is, Yvette, congratulations on Student of the Year, my good Student of the Year. That is a great honor, and appreciate that we had the opportunity to embarrass you publicly and just to see that. So thanks, everybody.
All right, board time. We'll start online. Director Kim, anything to add this evening?
Well, I'll have Mike, I'll have a lot more to say later on, but just really wanted to congratulate you and let you know that I'm so happy and thrilled for your retirement. That is long overdue and very much well deserved. So congratulations, and super happy for you and your family. That's all. Thank you.
Director Ward, anything to share this evening?
I'd like to say, echo the same. Congratulations again, Mike, on your retirement, and wish you all the very best. I want to thank all the staff, everyone, for being so diligent to answer all my questions and have those conversations. Thanks to all the educators, and happy American Education Week. And also to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Director Allen, anything to share this week?
I refuse to acknowledge the retirement of Superintendent Scott at this time. But I will say that if you're looking for, your next job, you do need substitute teachers. So I think you qualify. Feel free. You're welcome anytime. Okay, and that's all.
Yeah, thank you. I'll start off with and get the serious thing off the top and say that I appreciated that in our work session earlier, we discussed threat assessments and how the school district keeps our students safe in one area, because I think we're all very troubled by the shooting that took place at the University of Virginia 2 days ago, and 3 wonderful college students were killed. And so we don't want to live our life in fear, but we do acknowledge that that happened, and thank our administrators for keeping our students here safe. Also, I wanted to mention I had the pleasure of attending a significant portion of the OSBA conference for the first time with our chair and vice chair, and I appreciated Mark talking me into it. I have to say, I go into these, in a lot of my professional life, I go into these sorts of conferences with a mild amount of skepticism compared to my colleagues, just because I often find that trainings and sessions that last 2 hours, I could have read in 20 minutes. So I go with a little more skepticism than some people, but I found that the sessions where I got to discuss with school board members from around our community, we had especially one regional meeting with school board members from around Washington County, school board members who have served for many years and have a lot of experience, and talk about what their school district is going through and what ideas they have for the future. It was really, I really was glad that you encouraged me to attend. And in one session, separate from that regional one, I was sitting right behind a gentleman, and in talking with him, he told me that he has been a school board member
I believe it was grants past, but he's been a school member for 37 years. At 37 years, what service? So it was really neat to just get to pick his mind, someone who's given that much service to the community. And in one of the sessions, the speaker said something that is very generic, but what stuck with me is something to summarize some of the work we do. And he said, we can't be everything to every student, but we can be something to every student. I thought there was some truth to that, in that we have some core essential skills that every student needs in our schools. But beyond that, we also believe it's necessary for us to, in some way, touch each student with something they can do moving forward, a skill they can take away, it's a path for them. And not everyone's going to appreciate every program, but our team here in Hillsboro, with all the different programs we do, we are trying to be something to every student. And so I think that's a good way I think our district is leading the way in that. And I think it's worth noting. I appreciated what our Hillsboro Classified Union mentioned about proactive steps. I think that the more things you can bring to the board, and it's my personal opinion that there's no one I trust more to tell us what we need to do for our staff than the union that they've elected to represent them. And so I really appreciate hearing from you on that. The final thing I'll say, and more of a flight of fancy perhaps, but I was watching a documentary last night about the 2022 Nobel Prize winners. I always love learning about who wins the prizes each year. And the physics prize, the documentary was about some people who did some work in the late 60s and 70s and on Bell's inequality and quantum mechanics. And it made me think, I hope some of our students are going to be Nobel Prize winners someday. And I believe that they can be. So that's what I'm taking forward.
Thanks to everyone for coming out again and joining us this evening. First and foremost, happy American Education Week. That means something to me for a lot of reasons. It's interesting. I have a doctorate degree, but I never had a relationship with teachers the way I have them now. Very interesting. It took me until graduate school to develop even a relationship with a teacher. And so it really is a privilege to be on this dais, to be representing the city of Hillsboro, to be working with HEA, to be working with HCU, to be working with the executive team. It really, truly is. And I say that also because my sister is a teacher, a high school English teacher in the state of Georgia, and they don't have groups like you. And the stories that she tells, the prayers that I pray for her safety, the things that we go through, I talk about how blessed we are to have you guys. And I think stories like that don't get shared enough. So I'm saying thank you, because that means a lot. It does mean a lot. Also, I'm acknowledging Native American Heritage Month and saying, I say this often to people who ask me about living in Oregon, living in the Pacific Northwest. And I have always said that from the very beginning, when I first came here for my interview with that small company that I didn't stay with very long. But I remember coming up 26 and I didn't know what a 26 was. I was just following my rental car. And it was the dead of winter, but it was so green and it was so lush. And I thought, wow, this place is something different than I've never been before. And then after the first year, we used to tell people that you don't get it. This place is so blessed. And I believe that it is because of the presence and the spirit of the Native American people who were on this land and farmed this land and lived on this land. And that is the reason why that within a 10-mile radius, you have such a diversity of crop. There is no other place in the country that I know of that you can talk about llamas and pacas and bamboos and pumpkins and Marion berries. You don't get that. And so I just want to say to acknowledge that I acknowledge the blessing of the Native American people, because this land is blessed, because you guys can grow anything. This is just awesome. So I left my notes at home with regard to the OSBA meeting this weekend.
We're not doing that yet.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
But I do want to say that by far the highlight of the weekend was having that young woman with us. There were, I mean, you got to know, I felt the same way I did when I went to the first graduation ceremony last year or this year. It was just to see people talk to her and they were thrilled. And I thought, well, why didn't you bring yours? And I thought, oh, you don't have that. And it was very interesting. So thank you, Eva. She put up with Mark and I, who are like brothers and sisters, and we fight like brothers and sisters, and we love each other like brothers and sisters. And it was cool for her to see us and to see how we interact. And I got 4 or 5 compliments, not on us, but on her. That's impressive. That's why I'm on the board. All the other stuff really pales in comparison when you could see, and I know that it would have been the same if Kaylee had been there or if V had been there. I know it would have been the same. But I'm just saying it was so awesome. And we truly are the envy of a lot of people. I think we take that for granted. I mean, I was talking about our aviation program and this program and that program, and you can't help but just brag about what we do. And we can't do it without HEAU. We can't do it without HCU. Can't do it without the executive team. And we certainly can't do it without our fearless leader. So without getting into more further detail, I will say this. It did not take me 14 years to realize how special you are, my friend. It has been a privilege. We're not done yet, but thank you.
Not done yet. Yes, happy American Education Week. Was able to drive to 12 or 13 schools. I lost track, delivering just a symbol of our appreciation. I know an apple is, apples are what people give teachers, so, and educators. So, it's symbolic, but, hopefully it's also like a lot of fun for me to buzz the buzzer and like, who are you? Like, got a badge. Can I come in and give you some apples? So yes, great. And yeah, OSBA this weekend we'll have an official agenda item where we have, when the district pays for you to attend a conference, one of the expectations that you will share out at some point. Today's not that day, but just express our gratitude to OSBA and yes, Yvette, star of the show, and appreciate your filter on some of our more candid moments in the car and whatnot. Let's just put it that way. Well done. Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I know he will never, ever see this probably, but I also would give a shout out to Scott Rogers, the current OSBA president, outgoing OSBA president. He's the board chair in Athena Weston, which is east of Umatilla. There's not a whole lot east of Umatilla. And their district has 555 students. And, I would bet our perspectives on a lot of things differ, but the sort of beauty of OSBA to me is the way most of those differences get put aside and we just coalesce around our conversations on focusing how to do better for students and centering students in our conversation. So, it's really great weekend getting a chance to do that. I guess finally, change is hard, but we are equipped. We are well equipped to handle it. So I could not imagine going through this with a better group of folks. So super grateful for the time we've got to spend together. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to find the appropriate replacement for them. Thank you, everybody. Our meeting is adjourned.